grounded in our deep commitment to providing the best educational experience and outcomes for our students and staff. With only 5 weeks left until school begins, we hope to have a consensus that meets our spectrum of needs in the coming weeks. A major budget consideration will be the most feasible structure and mechanism to raise employee salaries and retain the dedicated workers who show up every single day to make a difference in this district. At the same time, we will continue to make transparency and open dialogue the cornerstone of our approach, as we believe all stakeholders deserve a voice and a role in this collaborative process. We value your involvement and feedback in order to make informed decisions aligned with the needs and aspirations of our students and community. And finally, I want to make my perspective clear. While we adults are charged with this critically important work, the effort is for our students, not some students, but for every child in the East Baton Rouge Parish school system. This is the focus we maintain every day, and it is the guidepost by which we operate here tonight. Thank you. President Lannis?
Yes, sir.
You will call up Kelly Lopez? Or?
Yes. Ms. Lopez?
Ms. Lopez, if you could come up.
Good evening, board members. Tonight I will present 4 versions of the 23-24 general fund budget. Along the way, I'm going to point out the different variances in all the versions.
I'm sorry, Ms. Lopez, just real quickly, because I know the agenda reads that we will vote on items 1 and 2, but I'm going to change the order. I'm sorry if I did not explain that earlier, because it makes more sense that we discuss those proposals before we go into any vote on any agenda item that discusses the budget. So you may continue.
Mr. Lannis, if there's no objection from the board,
yes.
Generally we check with the board. If there's no objection, you can move an item up for consideration.
Yes, sir. So if there's not any objection from anyone on our board, I will elect to move agenda item 3 up to begin. Seeing none at this time, Ms. Lopez, please continue.
It's Louisiana Revised Statute 39-1307. I bring this up because it's important to note that this statute has guidelines on how the board should approve and adopt a budget for all political subdivisions. With the multiple versions of the budget now available for public inspection, administration is recommending that the public hearing and approval be held on July 24th. Per LDOE and budget law, the board has until September 15th to approve the budget, and staff has until September 30th to upload the data into the system. Until the budget and salary schedule are approved by the board, the district will revert back to the 22-23 budget for salaries and payments. The district is only allowed 50% of the 22-23 budget until a new budget is approved. That being said, everyone will continue to be paid on the 22-23 salary schedule until a budget is approved. Those expenditures that were removed will continue until the budget is approved. To summarize the changes in the budget in comparison to our June 15th discussion, no school-based or classroom personnel changes have been made. 2 contracts to Junior Achievement and HES have been included in all 4 budgets. Some staffing changes were made to ensure continued success and district efficiencies. And regardless of what version is selected by this board, TRSL, lasers, and any retirement systems will be utilized in the payment of any additional salaries or stipends. This slide shows our fund balance over the past 5 years. I'd like to point out that we have never had this high of a fund balance. This is a significant amount of money for our district. ESSER has assisted in the growth of our fund balance and allowed us to be prepared for when these funds sunset. We are continuing our commitment to the financial health of our district. The financial summary above includes the differences between the 4 budgets we will discuss tonight. The revenues are the same as they are for every budget because these categories have not changed. The significant differences are inclusive of different salaries or stipend opportunities you have in each option. And during the next few slides, I will continue to explain the differences between the 4 versions. So version 1 summary. Version 1 is a permanent 8% increase to the salary schedule for the employees listed. These are broken out by salary schedules that they are tied to for ease of understanding. The general fund will be responsible for funding those support workers that are funded through the general fund. The grants in Proposition 2 will be responsible for funding those support workers that are funded in those specific funding sources. Proposition 3 will fund the increase for all employees on the teacher's salary schedule for all funding sources. Version 1 has several balances and considerations we should look at. The final balance for the fiscal year for 23-24 would be $1.2 million deficit. However, as we spoke of our healthy fund balance, this deficit would be completely absorbed, and we would remain with a $110.1 million fund balance at the end of 23-24. This budget would provide an 8% raise to staff. These raises would be permanent unless the district becomes financially incapable of funding them. The total cost of Proposition 3 is approximately $30 million. The fund balance of Proposition 3 for the 22-23 fiscal year is $30.3 million. The fund balance for Proposition 3 as of the end of 23-24 will be $8.8 million. As noted, Proposition 3 can only fund these raises for a single year. We will work continuously with staff and the board to determine the best way to place the salaries in a sustainable place. Version 2. Version 2 is a one-time $2,000 stipend to all district employee groups below the director level. And you can see on the screen, these are the levels that would not be included in the salary schedule. Proposition 1, 2, and child nutrition will be responsible for funding those support workers that are in those specific areas. Proposition 3 will fund the increase for all employees other than Proposition 1, Proposition 2, and child nutrition. Version 2's balances and considerations. The final balance for 23-24 general fund would be $1.1 million. The fund balance for general fund would be $112.4 million for the end of that fiscal year. This allows the district to provide an equitable stipend to all employees. The total cost of Proposition 3 is approximately $13.3 million. The fund balance for Proposition 3, as stated before, for 22-23 is approximately $30.3 million. At the end of 23-24, it would be $25.1 million with this stipend. A stipend would allow the board an opportunity to plan and workshop a raise for all employees while still providing an opportunity for all district employees. Version 3 is a one-time $3,000 stipend to all district employee groups below the director level, same as Version 2, and you can see the items listed on the screen as those who would not be included. The general fund would be responsible for $1,500 for all eligible employees in the general fund. Proposition 1, 2, and 3, and 1, 2, and child nutrition would be responsible for the full $3,000 stipend for all eligible employees within their funding source. Proposition 3 would fund the $1,500 of the stipend remaining for the general fund employees, as well as all eligible personnel in the other state and federal grants. Version 3 balances and considerations. The final balance for 23-24 general fund would be a $7.3 million deficit. However, again, with our healthy fund balance, it will be absolutely absorbed with a remaining balance of $104 million for the year. This version, like Version 2, allows an equitable stipend for all employees. The total cost of Proposition 3 is approximately $13 million. The fund balance for Proposition 3, as stated before, would be $30.3, and the fund balance at the end of 23-24 would be $25.4 million. Again, this stipend would allow the board and administration to plan and workshop next steps for a raise for all district employees. Our final version, Version 4, is a 3-year plan to incrementally increase employee salaries. In year 1, personnel on the teacher salary schedule will be provided a $4,000 stipend, and support workers will be provided with a $2,000 stipend. As you can see on the slide, the employees that are included and not included are the same as Version 1. The general fund would be responsible for funding $2,000 for teacher salary, $1,000 for support workers for those eligible employees within the general fund. Proposition 1, 2, and child nutrition were responsible for the entire amount of the stipend in their funding sources. Proposition 3 will fund $2,000 for teachers, $1,000 for support workers, for those eligible employees in the general fund, as well as the full $4,000, $2,000 to all eligible employees in other state and federal grants. Version 4 balances and considerations. The final fund balance for the general fund for 23-24 will be $8.8 million. Again, with our healthy fund balance, this will be absorbed and we will have an ending fund balance of $102.5 million. Like 2 and 3, this allows an equitable stipend for all employees. It allows the board and the administration an opportunity to plan and workshop a raise opportunity for 24 and 25. With a 3-year plan, the opportunities would be to have another stipend go up $1,000 for all in year 2 and a possible permanent salary increase for employees in year 3. So opportunities within the district, and I know we've talked about this before, but I think they're always valid. 2024, you have the opportunity to roll for the millage. With the evaluations of schools to either reduce or close based upon enrollment or their performance, the review of land sales and school consolidation, and the continued path user bright futures to help consolidate programming at each of the individual schools so that they get the programming that most suits their students. Okay, any questions?
Thank you, Ms. Lopez. All right, at this time now, we're going to open this process up for any board members that may have any questions. I see it as a few names already inside of the queue. We're going to start off with Coach Lewis. Oh, you were in the queue. I'll take you out.
I mean, I haven't, if I did that, it was a mistake.
Okay, no problem. Next up, we have School Board Member Mark Ballou.
Thank you, President Lannis. At the beginning of the presentation, you mentioned about consequences for not passing a budget by July.
Sure.
Now, what's the latest we can pass a budget where it will not affect salaries of our employees?
July 1. So,
Oh,
we have
July.
done this before in the past.
Yeah.
We've passed a budget in July. So let me tell you the major issue with this. We have a very antiquated system. So everyone is going to get their payment for the 23-24 salary schedule, regardless of when we have to pass the budget by September 15th, but they will receive their money. The problem comes is when you just have the 12-month employees working as you do right now, it's a simple retro pay. It's a small group of people. But as people return, your 11-month, your 10-month, and your 9-month, your teaching staff, that is a huge retro payment that has to be manually calculated, manually uploaded into the system. Errors can occur. So that is always my fear the further along we go. If we can pass it before our teachers come back, it's not a problem. We can take care of it. But that is a consideration that as of Monday, we revert back to 22-23. We will get paid exactly what we're being paid right now. No step increases.
Now, so to avoid those manual calculations, what's the latest date? Is it?
My hope is July 24th, which we would put the article in the paper. I would send it to the Advocate on Monday. It would be available for review on the 6th, given the 15 days of inspection. July 24th, we could hold both the hearing and approve the budget at the same time, and that will leave us plenty of time.
All right, thank you for that very specific answer. Now this item, Mr. President, says the recommended request is that we narrow these options down to 2. Okay. All right, well, thank you.
And that's for next week, by the way, at the cow.
Right,
Yes,
right.
sir.
That's all I had.
Thank you, School Board Member Ballou. Next, we have School Board Member Patrick Morton.
Thank you, President Lannis. Ms. Lopez, all 4 versions rely heavily on funding out of the surplus, if you will, of Prop 3, correct?
Yes, sir.
And they all pretty much exhaust most of that surplus in Prop 3, correct?
Version 1 exhausts by far the most.
Right. In looking at your summary, you've got, like, for versions 2 and 3, you talk about employees not included, and I'm a little confused.
Sure.
which employees are included in, like, in version 1 versus which, 2 and 3 I see are the same groups, and then 4, I'm not quite sure. Could you talk about that?
Sure, absolutely. So versions 2 and 3 are pretty straightforward. Everyone who is a director or above does not receive it. And that's pretty common. We've done that before with stipends because of the level of those employees. So that's pretty standard. It's not a huge group of people. It really isn't. Maybe 65. It's a small group. Version 1 and 4 are different. They have taken out curriculum support, which is going to be your deans, your literacy coaches, curriculum support people, principals and assistant principals would not receive it, administration, which would be everyone in the administration level, not just your director levels. That would be the entire, if you look in the salary schedule, the entire list, which is your coordinators, the vast majority of the supervisors in business services would not be included because they are administration. The supervisors in HR, for example, would not be included. The technology staff would not be included. Child nutrition administration and managers, so the version 1 and version 4 would apply to more of your hourly based staff, your cooks, your tradesmen, your drivers. It would not apply to, for example, your head of child nutrition, your managers.
So in short, the stipend versions 2 and 3 hit more people. More people will get the stipend.
Yes.
The pay raise versions 1 and 4 have fewer people getting.
Correct.
I think I have a lot more questions. There are a lot more issues associated with the budget, staffing level, staffing, models. And things like that, far beyond just what the raise or stipend is. But I don't know that we're positioned to have that full discussion tonight, so I don't know that I have any specific questions to ask on those issues tonight, particularly because I just got these summaries yesterday and today. So I think that's all the questions I have right now. President Lance, I would, on the issue that we've already talked about of having a meeting on July 24th to vote on the budget, I would note that I will be out of town on out of the country on a long planned vacation. So I would, if we're having a special meeting anyway for it, I would encourage us to have it the week of July, 30th or 31st, whatever it is, to allow me to attend. But I certainly understand the business got to continue whether I'm here or not.
We will certainly take that under consideration and get back with you about that. Thank you. Next, we have Coach Lewis. You ready, Coach?
I'm ready
Okay, let's go.
Ms. Lopez,
Yes, sir.
all the 2,000, the 3,000, the stipends, how does what the state legislature just approved, how would that benefit 2 and 3?
So it would benefit 2 and 3 in the fact that what they're offering is a $2,000 stipend for all certified employees, which would include your teachers, your principals, your APs, your literacy coaches, your curriculum staff, anyone who's certified, and $1,000 to all your non-certified people, which would be your paraprofessionals, your clerks, your executive secretaries. So they would receive $2,000 and $1,000 on top of that. Now, as of right now, I don't believe the governor has quite signed it, which means I have not received a lot of information from the Department of Ed on how they want to do this. I know they're going to feed it through the MFP, but I don't know when they're going to send the money, what the guidelines are going to, I know the guidelines for who is going to receive it, but when do they want me to pay it and that information. But they would still receive the $2,000 and the $1,000 on top of this.
And so in times past, when the legislature has, made these dollars available, what was the time frame like, if you can recall?
In my time in this position, this is the first stipend they have offered. In the past 3 that they have offered have all been salaries, which have been built into the salary schedule. And it's the same basis. Your certified people receive more than your uncertified people.
Okay. Thank you. I may have some other questions later on.
No problem.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Coach Lewis. Next, we have Vice President, Ms. Carla Powell.
Hi there.
Huh?
Okay, quick question. One of my questions was in regards to I know what School Board Member Baloo mentioned as well about the time frame that we're dealing with.
Sure.
I know that some of these plans or our projected budget just in general may include some staffing concerns or staffing cuts or changes.
Sure.
So that means the longer that we take, the longer it's going to take for people to have their employment secured. Is that correct?
Correct, because if they are in the 22-23 budget, they still exist because that's what you're running on.
Okay, so that was one of my questions. The other is, could you speak to, I guess, specifically for plan, for the budget option 2 and 3 of the ending balances in the general fund? How does our matrix kind of support that?
Okay, so the difference between the two and why one has a positive balance and one has a negative balance is because with the version 2, it's the $2,000 stipend that the same group of people receives. However, the entire thing is being paid out of Proposition 3 or out of Proposition 1 and 2 and child nutrition. So the general fund is not affected at all, basically. With option 3, you have the $1,500 that's coming out of general fund, and it is a large group of people all receiving the $1,500, and the other $1,500 is paid out of Prop 3. So that is the differential between the two and why you're seeing the negative fund balance in the general fund, because it's paying that $1,500 to a large group of people.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. Thank you, Vice President Powell. Next, we have School Board Member Nathan Russ.
Yes, so question I have, or request for some information that may be difficult to produce just right off the cuff, but would be helpful for me, is as we're looking at these different 4 plans, specifically in how we have our permutations of funding sources for different types of raises and or stipends, it would be helpful for each of these blocks to essentially have a dollar amount so I can understand, okay, if we're looking at version 1, the general fund will fund the 8% increase. What is the dollar amount attached to that funding source for that particular?
Sure.
And I would like to see that for each plan. I would also like to see specifically for our Prop 1, 2, and 3 allocation of these funding sources, what the impact to those funds would be. Because what I don't have, I've seen some numbers on Prop 3 and the surplus we have there. I have no clue of what that it would be for Prop 1 and 2 because we hadn't talked about that previously. So I would want to know what the impact to those funds would be. Like if we're going to fund a stipend or a raise or something from Prop 1 and 2, what is our surplus in those funds? Do we have one? What would the impact be? So other questions I have, perhaps for our superintendent, would be on our summary of budget updates, some changes that have been made from previous drafts. I see reduction changes include the following, and it lists some tallies of different positions have changed. Is that a change in the reduction number from reducing 9 to reducing 6?
Correct.
Okay. So instead of, for instance, under executive directors, originally the plan was to reduce, I think, from 18 to 9 or from 16 to 9?
Yes. We're only reducing 6 instead of reducing 9. Yes.
Okay, so from 16 to 10, is that accurate? Okay. And the same for our chiefs. We have how many chiefs?
12, 13?
Maybe that's a sign we have too many chiefs. Just kidding.
I just count them, sir.
Yeah, we don't have 12, 13 chiefs.
Okay.
There's about, I want to say it's about 9 of us. I'm trying to just count the numbers. 10 total.
So we'll reduce it from 10 to 8.
We're reducing 2 chiefs and also an associate superintendent position, which is
Okay.
much higher than a chief position in
Okay.
terms of a salary.
Thank you. And then can anyone give me the background on the change with the Hess contract increase?
So I can give a lot of background on that, School Board Member Russ. There's been ongoing conversations with not just our team, but also the HES team to see how we got into the certain predicament that we're currently in. One of which is they don't have enough people on the ground in the daytime or at night. The other one is that they do not have an equitable funding mechanism right now, so they cannot pay workers a fair wage. So it's harder for them to retain and keep effective workers, is what I'll say. So a lot of that conversation was, okay, what did the original contract start off at? What would it take to get you to get you up to speed on what all the needs that we have, and also putting quality assurance around what we currently see happening at our schools. So that was the basis for us going back and looking at that inside of this particular budget.
Is it geared primarily towards like janitorial, which I know has been an issue, or is that maintenance, or is that just more like a site-wide?
I would say it's site-wide, because they are adding quality assurance, something they haven't had in the past, and there's going to be an independent evaluator that's going to now come in and assess all of our campuses to ensure that cleanliness is at an optimal standard, and that the staffing models at our schools are indefinitely changing.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. That's all my questions.
All right. Thank you, School Board Member Russ. Next, we have School Board Member Katie Kennerson.
Let's see. So from what I saw on information that we received recently, each of these four proposals had an author behind it. So the first one, I believe, was the superintendent's plan, right? Which is the original 8% raise, from what I understand. So last we spoke of that up here, there was no plan for sustainability. There continues to be a giant lack of communication within this office, but I want to ask you, has there been any discussion or any strategies or any ideas behind being able to do this past this year since we last talked about it?
Yes, Board Member Kennison. What I did do is I spoke to President Lannis about a different option, which was the option 4 option, to give us more time to make sure not only we're looking at a salary increase for 4%, but also the other was not 4% now, it's a whole number, to give us more time to incrementally allow us to arrive to getting the staff the increase in salary. And the other part too is because we have not touched the fund balance, we would have options now looking at fund balance, but also with consolidation. And there's also other opportunities, as you saw. I don't know if you could pull up that last page, Kelly, that had land sales. Those were all of the different set of options that we started to look at. There were things that we can do to continue to kind of make sure that we were able to fund dollars beyond the next 2 to 3 years.
But specifically for version 1, I'm not talking about version 4. For version 1, we were pretty much exactly where we were last time we spoke. It's the same ideas, but with no concrete plan, correct? I mean, am I correct? And,
No,
and
so-
using this would exhaust Proposition 3, is that correct? So come next year, we're still just,
So we wanted
here's some
to,
ideas?
So we wanted to provide tonight all the options so the public and the board can see all the options. But if you ask for recommendation, we would prefer to shift towards the option number 4. We think that's a much better option and approach as we're working with myself and the board president than option number 1, which would give us a much better opportunity to do sustainability as we increase salaries and also ensure that we focus on our 4 areas around academics, safety, facilities, and pay raises for the staff.
So you agree that option 1 is not a responsible decision?
I would agree that we would prefer not to do option 1. We'd rather do option 4.
Can I give context, School Board Member Kennison? I specifically asked the superintendent and his staff, or more specifically Ms. Lopez, to include the original proposal because I wanted the board members as well as our community to see what those impacts are going to be to not only our funds but also to classroom and how will it affect the accounts that we currently have. So when you look at Proposition 3, when you look at fund balance, I just wanted us to see everything that we have discussed thus far. So I specifically asked that.
Okay, but okay. And then it says that, where'd it go? I don't see where it went, but raises would be permanent unless the district becomes financially insolvent. From what I understand, we can't give a raise and then take it away, right? Aren't there?
Correct.
Okay, so that's not a thing.
No, you can't take it away.
Okay, so gotcha. A couple other questions. The stipend versions, it has specific payout times. Is there any reasoning for that? Can that be changed to perhaps other, like in October and February, or is it? How did we arrive at that?
The time can be whenever the board or the administration decides they would like to do it. We have always done December and May. Number one, it is at the end of each semester. We ensure that staff members have, worked the entire semester. Those that have truly worked with our students and provided these services receive this benefit. Secondly, it's lovely to have a Christmas and summer bonus.
But
So it's a good time for them.
We are, we can change based on consensus of people if they want it at different times. We can decide that here.
You can decide on time, but we couldn't do these people get it here. No, we wouldn't do that. But yes,
Okay.
the board has absolute authority to decide how they would like to do this.
Okay. I have other things to say, but I'm not going to. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, School Board Member Kennison. Next, we have School Board Member Michael Goday.
Thank you. I just wanted to provide a little bit of context to some of this. Ms. Lopez, in 21-22, if I remember right, that budget proposed was basically a balanced budget, correct?
Correct.
And we ended up with a $22 million surplus plus $9 million that we put into the health fund. So we ended up really with a $30 million surplus. This past year, we had basically a balanced budget, and we ended up with a $19 million surplus. So the only, and we're talking about basically a $550 million budget. So 1% of that's 5.5 million. Do you think any of your forecasts on revenues and cost and everything like that are accurate to 1%?
Sir, anything's possible. Who knew
Okay.
sales
The
tax
point
would
I'm
this
trying
high?
to make is, we look at numbers and we go from 1.1 million positive to 8.8 million negative. Those numbers are all within the accuracy of those numbers are within the accuracy of the budget, because there's that much uncertainty on any of these things between number of employees, what kind of costs come in, what's the cost of electricity, what's the cost of gasoline, what sales tax revenues come in, and so on. So the only point I'm trying to make is I wouldn't put too much emphasis on the difference between the different plans in the impact on the budget, positive or negative, because they're all within the margin of error. Okay, I just want to be clear. Now, I also want to talk a little bit about the item of sustainability, because that's something that's been mentioned a lot, and I think, unfortunately, it has created some level of unease with employees. First of all, we ended this year with well over 200 classroom or 200 certified, or about 200 certified vacancies, if I remember correctly, and we know we have some retirees. So if you're a teacher, there's no chance you're losing your job as we go through all of this. There's not been any, the only changes that have been made to the staffing model have been very minor, and I think only at middle school or something like that for 1 or 2 students. So if you're a teacher out there, you got nothing to worry about. You have a job. And the reason I bring that up is because I look at, coming here, I saw signs on the billboards on I-10 going, Ascension Parish loves our teachers, get $10,000. So one of the issues that we need to make sure that we recognize is that by delaying and dragging this out longer and longer and longer, we're allowing more and more time for not only our current teachers, but just as importantly, if not more importantly, prospective teachers to go out and take jobs in other parishes and other districts. So there is a cost of delay. Now, I know we're not ready to pass a budget right now, but I'm just trying to make sure we could sit here and debate forever about which version of this is best, and, you know, how many opinions do you want to get on something, but we got to decide on something and move forward, because there is a cost of delay. We're going to be losing teachers. And that brings me back to my last point on sustainability. The key to sustainability in this district is only two things in my mind. One is academic progress and student enrollment, and those two are related. Both of those relate directly to the number and quality of teachers that we have. We have 200 classrooms that were empty with a teacher, and we're not going to expect to get the same academic results from those classrooms as not, if they had a teacher. We need to get quality teachers in every one of our classrooms as quickly as we can, and we need to continue hiring good teachers and not lose them to surrounding districts. I don't, in any instance, take that it's a given that charter schools will fill up, that private schools will fill up. We always say competition is what makes everyone stronger. I think we're doing lots of things to make our district stronger. If you look at the pathways, if you look at dual enrollment, you look at the early childhood and all the things we do. And the key to all of that is our most important resource, our staff. And I meant staff, I meant teachers and staff. That's what I meant exactly, is our teachers out there in the classrooms working with the students. And to me, sustainability, the biggest thing we do for sustainability is to pay those people what they deserve to be paid and get on with it. We need to find, we can't balance the budget on the backs of the teachers. We have to pay the teachers what they deserve, or we're not going to have teachers in our classrooms, and we're not going to get the academic performance. And that's the way to get to a non-sustainable district if we continue to lose students to charter schools and everything else. So I think we're fooling ourselves as we go through this and talk about, you know, we can't afford a salary increase. My view is we can't afford not to do a salary increase, because that is the heart and soul of what we're here to do, and the heart and soul of what our focus is, and the heart and soul of how we're going to make this district sustainable. We have to compete. You know, we have numbers now that are showing us that charter schools are not filling up their thing. I don't take it as a given just because a charter school has an empty seat that someone's going to go there. I don't take it as a given that just because a private school has an empty seat that they're going to go there. We can compete, but we can't compete if we don't have adequate teachers, and we don't have qualified teachers, and we don't have motivated teachers, because we're treating them fairly. And so I, for one, am going to vote for anything that gives our teachers the pay raise that they deserve and make it a sustainable pay raise, because to me, that's our only path to sustainability for this district. Thank you.
Thank you, School Board Member Gode. Next, we have Coach Lewis back in the queue. Yes, sir. I'll come back to you. School Board, I'm going to come back to you now. You want to go now?
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay.
Kelly, I was really glad to see that, you know, whether it's a stipend or a raise, that the retirement system, you know, those teachers' retirements will be taken care of.
Absolutely.
We've got people been working in this district for 28, 30 years, and a lot of them are going to retire, and we need to make sure that it's healthy, you know, that they can retire the way that they've always thought about retiring.
Sure.
I'm going to pivot back to a question about the HES contract. That still has to be approved. Right now, it's just words on paper
Yes.
about HES. Okay, 3 months ago, we were ready to run HES out of town on a rail. Okay, and now all of a sudden, we're going to give them more money. I'm just not feeling that one. We had a meeting back there with them, and all these great things they were going to do to show us the improvement. I have not seen one piece of paper with anything that they've done to improve their services. And I'll reserve the rest of my comments for HES when we get to their contract. Thank you.
Thank you, Coach Lewis. Next, we have School Board Member Patrick Martin in the queue.
Thank you, President Lannis. Picking up on Mr. Goday's points, I certainly agree that our teachers are very most important asset in our support staff that are in the trenches with our kids every day. I think the question that the board has to decide is what level of risk and how we balance all the risk associated with us. Because we do have a real risk that teachers feel unappreciated. The compensation study that was done a year and a half, 2 years ago indicates very clearly that on the whole, while there are too much variation among pay for comparable positions, on the whole, we significantly underpay folks and that we should not be underpaying at all. But at the same time, we have a fiscal responsibility to the soundness of the system. And we heard a lot of fear and uncertainty in the audience at the last meeting with folks that were afraid that if the budget projections prove to be more on target than they've been in the past couple of years, right? And we don't have a big rosy surplus and we've committed to a permanent pay raise and suddenly we've got to go back on our word and unfund that because we declare essentially some kind of fiscal instability. That's going to have negative consequences and profound long-term negative consequences on the system. So we've got to balance those risks. And yes, the past couple of years, the data shows that we have underestimated revenue and overestimated expenses going into the beginning of the year, and that's essentially left money on the table, to Mr. Goday's point, that could have been used to pay our teachers better. So I agree with that, but as they always say in all the investment prospectuses, past performance is no guarantee of future performance, and so we've got to collectively decide risk. I am concerned, however, and I share Mr. Goday's concern about the feeling of fear and uncertainty that we're seeing in the community of our teachers and support staff about whether they'll have a job. And so to that end, Superintendent, I'd like to ask you if you could explain the rationale behind sending the letter that Ms. Hall sent on June 26th, basically saying it is my responsibility to give notice to all employees that there's a possibility that your position will be affected. That seems very likely to incite additional concern and fear when we're in the middle of trying to reassure everybody how valued they are. So could you address that for me, Superintendent?
Yes, Board Member Martin. So a part of our process legally, and also we spoke with General Counsel, was to ensure that any potential, due to the board not voting on a budget, any potential employee, because we were making reductions, that would be potential for a job elimination, that we would need to at least provide a notification letter to prepare them for that until the actual budget is voted on. And so that process is the reason why we sent letters to inform them of that process. And so once that letter is sent out, it's no different than when we give letters, if you're on Title I, for example, on grants or any of those, we always provide a letter giving them, to just inform them that there may be a possibility depending on how the actual vote is, so employees can be prepared for whatever changes and shifts may happen. And if I could just add, I know General Counsel, we spoke a lot about when to notify staff. Can you want to bring anything in on there?
My involvement in the process in terms of the process of how that would go is we have policy that speaks specifically to reduction in personnel. And it's pretty public for everyone to see. It lays out a process for certified employees and non-certified employees, what that's supposed to look like. When the superintendent approached me about notification of employees, I indicated to him that in the past, at some point prior to a budget approval, notification would be sent to employees. The policy does not specify specifically whether that requires board approval or not. It just says the superintendent can notify employees. So we've had superintendents in the past who have come to the board and sought approval to send that letter. Dr. Narcisse opted to wait and send it at a later point. The letter is appropriate and legal. My reading of it, it basically puts the employee on notice that there's a possibility of impact based on the category that employee is employed in. And so it's a possibility contingent upon the board approving the budget. It's a notice.
So, but Superintendent, this notice went out to all employees, correct?
No.
No. Because it says, it is my responsibility to give notice to all employees that there's a possibility that your position will be affected. Typo?
No, let me, Ms. Hall, could you come up to explain?
Hello, good night, everyone. So it is, the letter was not sent out. We actually met with everyone that was impacted or identified in the budget. So it's just the folks who were identified in the budget as attached to the title. So not
Okay.
everyone.
So give me an example of what categories of employees.
Executive directors. So all executive directors, that's in the proposed budget, it says executive directors. So anyone with the title, executive directors, received a letter hand-delivered by me.
Which version of the proposed budget?
The one that's posted on the website.
I mean, I'm not trying to.
I understand.
There's 4 versions that have been presented tonight, 4 that were posted yesterday on board docs. So which is it, version 1, 2, 3, 4? Which one?
The staffing, from my understanding, the staffing allocations or the staffing identifications, the positions did not change. So for me, it was just looking at the positions, the titles, and just making sure folks are aware that this is a possibility.
So we can get Ms. Lopez in a minute. I'm not done on this issue. To clarify whether all 4 models are the same in terms of employees who might be identified as potential target for reduction. Can you give me a rough ballpark of how many employees you talked with?
Of course I can. So I sent out an invite to 100 and, hold on, I have the information here. So it was 160 invites that I sent out. There are still folks on vacation, out on conferences, but I've spoke to majority of the staff that were identified by the title in the budget that I used.
And in whichever version of the budget you are operating on from, not sure if I really want to ask this or not. So let's talk it through before you actually answer it if it's sensitive, because I understand that these are people's livelihoods. Right? This is a very serious issue. Of those 160 people that would be affected by a board decision on the budget in this regard, how many do we think roughly? It was like 50% of those are going to be possibly targeted for reduction, 100% of them?
So it's 72 reductions and 14 eliminations.
Okay.
Positions, per se.
And so, Mr. Samlin, in these positions that are receiving this letter, would any of those, are all of those kind of unclassified or uncertified positions such that they could be eliminated without a formal reduction in force finding by the board?
So if you look at the reduction in force policy, there's not a requirement for a board vote. The board reduces its personnel of force via the budget approval, right? So when the budget is presented to you, if there's a proposal to reduce force by the superintendent, you guys have to approve that. You do that through your board vote. The notification to employees is a separate process. I think that might be what you're getting at, Mr. Martin.
Well, yeah, I think so. I mean, some people have suggested to me, and I have not read the regulations of policy memorandum manual myself. Some people have suggested that their understanding, the understanding of the public, is that a board vote to have a reduction in force to eliminate contract. We talked at the last meeting a lot about whether when we vote to eliminate position, it's really eliminated or it like lingers on for a year to work out a contract term or whatnot. I think that's what I'm really getting at, right? Is does the, when we eliminate these positions in this budget, if we were to choose to do that, would that mean that those people are actually out of a job? Would they have rights to bump into other positions in the system? What would that look like? And what formal vote of the board, if any, would be required under the terms of some of the contracts or whatever, or policy or whatever, in order to affect some categories of these employees?
Right. So I get your question now. So as to the first part of that, any individual who's certified, employed in the district, whose position is eliminated, would still be able to be reassigned or pushed to another position in the district. His or her salary would change based upon their reassignment because their previous position was eliminated in the budget. One of the tenets of state law under administrative contracts, and I think that's statute 17444, is one way in which you can end a contract is by eliminating that position either through elimination in the budget or reorganization within the district itself. Those are two of the conditions. And so to answer the first part, I think your question, any person who's certified in the district can be reassigned and could seek a reassignment to somewhere else in the district to another position. Okay? Uncertified personnel could also be reassigned, but there's less guarantee there with uncertified personnel. Our policy actually speaks to the conditions for reduction, whether the board approves sending a notice or the superintendent does it through the budget. The conditions are pretty specific. For uncertified personnel, and I'm speaking to you from memory without having the policy in front of me, performance and effectiveness are first, and certification/qualifications is the second condition. For certified personnel, it's performance, effectiveness, and demand. Demand is actually the first condition, followed by performance and effectiveness.
Thank you, Mr. Shamlin. Talk to me about notice requirements in our policy or state law, because some people also under the belief that like it's too late for the upcoming year to give a notice of a position elimination or a reduction in force or whatever. And so talk to me about that in terms of timing and particularly as it then relates to timing of the formal notice that Ms. Hall sent out on behalf of the superintendent, notifying this in terms of what is the actual timing requirement and why isn't any notice at all required, and at what level does the policy say when, we haven't adopted any budget. That position of not having any adopted budget has not changed since last month when we talked about this at a board meeting. We have every expectation, it's clear we're not going to approve a budget before the end of the current fiscal year, but we have every expectation that before the end of July we'll approve a budget. So what legal difference would it make giving notice June 26th versus giving notice after we've actually made a decision on the budget on July 24th or 31st or whenever we do?
Yeah, so I actually pulled up the policy. I wanted to be sure I wasn't misspeaking on this. And I hope I answer your question, Mr. Martin. I'm hoping
if you don't, I'll let
correctly.
you know.
Okay, I'm sure you will. The notice to the individual employee requirement actually kicks in after the reduction action is instituted. There are requirements as to notice to the employee within a certain period of time. I don't want to say the exact number of days, but the employee has a period of time to respond and ask for a review of that decision. And that's for every employee whose position is eliminated within the budget. So there's a process by which they will be notified that their position has been eliminated, and they'll be able to request a review of that decision, right? Pre that decision, I could find nothing in our policy, and I don't have state law in front of me, in our policy that requires a notice time. It would be up to the judgment of the superintendent and the board, right? That you could have made the decision this week or in April or May based upon budget planning and what the process is and where you are in that process. And we're talking about a pre-notice to people, which I think is what you're questioning right now.
It seems to be what we've given is a pre-notice to people.
Right.
Is there any legal requirement for this pre-notice or any legal impact of giving the pre-notice?
Not in policy that I can see. All notice requirements are post. And I will double check that for you. I'm reading it just sitting here, but not in our policy requirements. Okay.
So I think, and look, on the one hand, certainly it is fair to affected staff to give them as much notice that some action may be taken that would be detrimental to them, to give them an opportunity to come here and tell us, what they think about that impact, right, before we take that action. I think my concern, Superintendent, is on the rather stark wording of the letter. So could you elaborate? It sounds like from a legal perspective, it's your discretion on what kind of pre-notice, if you will, to give. Can you speak, and then I'll let it go, but if you can just speak to what led you to the decision to put out this notice in this form?
Yeah, my concern, Board Member Martin, was to provide staff with a runway if they were going to be, if the board voted to eliminate, approve a budget where I had to go ahead and eliminate positions so they can kind of pre-plan whatever would happen, anticipated, for their next steps. And so that was the purpose of trying to do that. And I also tried to also make sure I was engaging with council and others to get a good sense on what has been past practice in the system to be able to notify folks if that happened.
So I think my final concern, and then I'm done, President Lannis, is to a certain extent, giving this kind of notice for the right reasons, as you suggest, to give affected employees, if they're not going to be here next year, we don't want them to find out in August 15th when it's too late for them to go find other employment. At the same time, we're really barely into real discussions on the budget options before us, right? And we might decide as we work through this, I don't know, right, because we haven't worked through it yet, we might decide as a board that we don't want to eliminate these positions, right, that these positions are significant and important, and therefore we'd rather make other choices, a slightly lesser stipend or whatever else we might decide to do. And by sending out the notice, it is going to, virtually guarantee that the best of the employees in that category are going to go off to greener pastures, and make it more difficult. So really, I would have preferred that we be farther along or have more consensus on where the budget's going to land before we did that. But I understand your reasoning for it. Thank you.
Thank you, School Board Member Martin. Before I go to School Board Member Gode, I would just because I understand all the concern around personnel, but I just want to caution our board that any personnel-related issues falls at the footstep or the doorstep of the superintendent. And this is stipulated under Louisiana Constitution, Act 1, pages 5 through 7, which stipulate what that looks like. So I just wanted to caution us on that, because I did hear some out of the conversation along the lines of we may not want to eliminate positions, but we may not be in a place to allow that authority or have that authority placed upon our board. So I just want to caution on that.
President Landis, excuse me, with respect, what I heard Mr. Samlin say is the act of passing the budget that actually eliminates those positions. So I think that means it is foursquare our decision to eliminate those positions or not eliminate those positions. Is that correct, Mr. Samlin?
Yeah, that's correct. Just to clarify, the superintendent's purview is in hiring, firing, evaluation. The board's purview is in the creation and elimination of positions. So there's a difference. I just want to make sure it's clarified for the board.
But that's based on suggestions from the superintendent, correct?
No. So let me illustrate.
Oh, go ahead,
So
please.
the board can vote to create 10 positions in a particular category. The superintendent then decides who fills those positions.
Okay.
The board does not have the authority to tell the superintendent who to place in those 10 positions.
Gotcha. All right.
The board does have the authority to either create or take those positions away. Does that help?
Yeah, no, thank
clarify?
you, and I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay. All right. Without moving right along, School Board Member Gode, you're in the queue.
Yes, thank you for that past discussion. I just want to follow up on one item that colleague Martin talked about in the risk that we face with budgets and things like that. And I just want us to caution ourselves to be very careful about staring acute risk in the face versus systemic risk in the long term. And yes, there is some level of risk. There always is. I mean, we went through COVID. No one saw that coming for our budgets and things like that. There is some short-term financial risk. But to me, the systemic risk in the long term is much, much greater, because if we don't have good teachers, we're going to lose students. And if we don't have students, we don't have money. It's $14,000 plus per student. And so I don't want us to get overwhelmed by the short-term risk and forget about the major long-term risk, because I still believe the biggest sustainability issue we have is academic progress and student enrollment. And both of those relate directly to having enough qualified teachers in the classroom, because those are the only ones who can provide those results. So I just want to caution the board not to get so focused on the short-term acute risk and forget about the longer-term systemic risk. Because hopefully, I'm not going to be on this board in 4 years from now, because I've already said I'm not running again. But I hope 4 years from now, those people that are on this board will be sitting here with increased enrollment and a financially stable system that is progressing along with tremendous academic achievements. That's the way we make this system sustainable. Thank you.
Thank you, School Board Member Gode. Next, we have Vice President Carla Powell.
Thank you. So my original question was actually answered by Mr. Shamlin, between Mr. Martin and Mr. Shamlin. But I did want to add on to what Mr. Gode said as well. I totally agree that, you know, we want to look at the long term. But in addition, we also want to think about that trust that we often speak about, and that our communities or our community desires to trust us as a board. And unfortunately, somewhere along the way, that trust has been lost. What I've noticed is the same people who are teachers are the same ones who are parents. And we have to make sure, number one, that we meet their short-term goal, as well as provide an opportunity of transparency and honesty that will allow them to want to continue to work in our district and continue to raise their children here. I know that there are some of my colleagues who don't agree with my statement sometimes when I make it personal, and I'm okay with that. But at the end of the day, you know, I look forward to when I'm able to have additional funds, whether it's a small amount or not even a permanent amount, but if I know that a surplus or a bonus or a stipend is coming my way, it's going to help me in my household, you know. So with that in mind, we have to think about the short term and the long term, and also building the trust back within our school districts and allowing those who, number one, raise their families here, and number two, raise their families here and also look at us for employment, to have, number one, pride in the district and trust in our district as well. Thank you.
Thank you, School Board Member Vice President Carla Powell. At this time, seeing no other names inside of the queue, we will now turn to our community for public comment. I will ask anyone who does have a comment, please make sure that you get a orange or gold comment card, fill it out, give it to Madam Secretary. She'll be sure to get it to me, and I'll be sure to call on you. First up for this item, we have Ms. Storm Matthews.
Just to be clear, Act 1, all reduction in force policies adopted by the local school board for use must be solely upon demand, performance, and effectiveness, must start with least effective. I know there's an assistant principal that has all highly effectives and has 15 years experience and absolutely should be being considered as a principal right now, and they're not. They got one of them letters. So clearly we're not going by Act 1 right now. So let's just be clear about that. Okay, on to this item. I would like consideration of the payout to be October, regardless of the selection of whatever you all decide. This would be after the MFP payment, but enough time to use the payment for the holidays, however employees wish. Withholding till December or May will not prevent people from leaving. People are going to go to the higher paying districts if they choose to, holding that little $1,000 until December or May is not going to force them to stay through the semester. The rest of my statement is speaking solely as myself as an individual. I support option 2, the 2,000. One is for all educators, teachers and support workers alike, for the curriculum people, for the deans and the administrators who are vastly paid at different levels. Also, there's 200 vacancies, yet HR is giving this intimidating letter when most of those people that are getting this letter are certified teachers. So we have 200 vacancies. Guess what? Have them back in the classroom. I mean, just a few thoughts. Let's encourage our teachers, because guess what? Money isn't going to make you stay if you're treated like crap constantly.
Thank you, Ms. Matthews. Next, we have Dr. James Finney.
Thank you. First, the superintendent proposed an 8% pay raise with no way to pay for it, leveraged that to try to get himself a job in another state, and now you have a mess to clean up. Remember that if he comes back and asks for an extension and a pay raise here in a week or two.
Dr. Finney, I ask that you please stay germane to the topic.
I'm
We're talking about proposals.
very
We're not
germane
talking about
to the
any
topic.
job right now. So I'm just asking you to please stay germane to the topic. Thank you.
Furthermore, the superintendent failed to present a complete set of budgets, and now he's using the power of those letters from the 26th to try to force your hand into jumping the gun and approving budgets and pay raises and or stipends that are nowhere close to properly created, analyzed, presented. Mr. Godet, this is not a private company. It is a public institution, and there are certain expectations and things that have to be done in a certain manner that would not be necessary or perhaps desired in a private company. I do appreciate the PowerPoint. I wish it had shown up earlier because that's much clearer in the presentation than the PDF that had been on the backup for the last day or so. I also appreciate the acknowledgement by Mr. Shamlin that the superintendent is not allowed to create positions without the board's approval, if I understood him correctly. And so I hope the superintendent would discontinue the practice of creating positions, filling them without advertisement, and never asking for the board's approval. And finally, raises are nice for retaining valued employees, but to second what Ms. Matthews said, if you're making people miserable, uncomfortable, threatened, as opposed to treating them with respect, kindness, and courtesy, the good ones are going to leave. You're going to be stuck with inexperienced or weak teachers, and then the superintendent will have accomplished his goal of destroying the public education system, what he was hired to do. You need to provide some adult supervision here. You know, I would encourage you to adopt something similar to Plan Number 2. I sent you all a somewhat tweaked version of that I would hope you would make a process for consideration, where the stipends would come from ESSER 3 instead of locally generated funds. Anyway, clearly the superintendent is only here for a while. You're living in the community. Hopefully your kids and grandkids will stay in the community, not Maryland or Florida. So provide some oversight, provide some long-term planning. Do not give the superintendent whatever he asks for just because it's the superintendent. Or if you want to give him what he asks for, make sure it's actually clear what he's asking for instead of a blank check. Thanks.
Thank you, Dr. Finney. Next, we have Ms. Reams Brown. And as you wake your way to the mic, Ms. Reams Brown, I would only ask that we are respectful of the rules tonight. We are not discussing anything involving a contract. Tonight, we're talking about proposals for our 2023-2024 budget. Thank you.
Good afternoon, board members, board president, and vice president. I'm Angela Reams Brown, president of the East Baton Rouge Federation of Teachers and Support Workers. And so whenever I address this board, I'm speaking about all of our members. I think the last time we were here, you guys had a budget that did not include any support staff receiving any kind of raise. And at that point, I think everybody made it clear that that was not acceptable. There are 4 options. I've looked at all 4. I've talked to my membership about them. The key thing for the membership is that they receive the respect from this board that they deserve. And part of that is a pay raise. They will no longer report to work and work without a pay raise. It's just not acceptable. And it's amazing how when you sit in the audience and you watch your board members and how some of them think this is a joke or it's funny, I wonder what the mindset is. This is about people's lives. And that means everybody who works for the East Baton Rouge Parish School System deserves a raise. Now, yes, we would like a raise with sustainability, but right now we need something to get people back in the classroom come August 1st. And the only thing I can think of that will do that is a pay raise. Now, I'm gonna break the rule, President Landis, and say, we've got to get off this bashing the superintendent. That's not what we're here for. We have to work collectively as a group to make sure that the East Baton Rouge Parish School System is the best school system it can be. And it can't be done when all we want to do is point the finger. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Reams Brown. Next, we have Ms. Karonda Corley.
Good afternoon. My name is Karonda Corley. This is Corinth Corley, future advocate. I am a parent and a disabilities advocate. Whichever microphone you want me to be in, I'm gonna be in it. I'm gonna be very quick. Leadership is what's needed in order to keep people. So when we say that we don't want nobody to bash leadership, the failure to be able to have positions filled and the failure to be able to have staff for the upcoming school year is a reflection of leadership. According to Louisiana law, our board is posed with the task to make sure that we have teachers in every single classroom for this upcoming school year. My child did not have a teacher for the majority of the school year. Problem. Every Student Succeed Act says they're supposed to be certified teachers. That's supposed to be there, and their parents are supposed to be included in all the policy decision making. That's not happening. So when you want to bring up a budget, let's talk about that special budget. See, you have a whole pupil appraisal department that's getting pissed on, courtesy of this board. Those therapists, that's how we getting money into this school system, this multi-billion-dollar industry. So when you don't have people there, what do you tell all these parents of children with disabilities that will be trying to get their children into school for August 1st? Because you don't have enough staff working there. Please explain to me how you sent out letters cutting people, telling people that they may not have a job, but yet you did interviews today. Please explain that. Because that's an oxymoron, or just in case y'all don't know the dictionary, that's a contradiction. Please understand that our leader has failed us, because every student every day doesn't matter. Why didn't you cut all those people in your senior cabinet? All of them. If you cut them, that's a few $1 million that will be coming back. A few million. Half of them don't know what their role or responsibility is. They don't even know how to do the job. Why haven't they been cut? You're cutting people that actually matter. You wonder how people go and shoot up places? This how. Because your letter said that they go get another notice telling them, confirming whether or not they go have a job. So when you wonder how those things happen, it's because you telling them they don't matter. But Ascension School Board said that they gladly will welcome our staff. So please think about that, because I'm telling you, the lawsuits are real. And just in case you forgot, every child with a disability can sue every board member individually. Thank you.
Before I move forward with public comment, any comment that speaks towards a teacher or any employee harming someone else will not be tolerated inside of this boardroom. I just want to be very clear about that. We don't promote that. We don't stand by it, and it will not take place again. I just want to be very clear. Anybody that comes to the mic that addresses anything about employees shooting each other or shooting anyone in this district, it will not be tolerated, and I will stop it at the mic. Thank you. Moving forward, Dr. Mary Leach.
Good evening. I'll be back because I have a lot to say. There's a budget issue that we need to make a decision on, we collectively, all of us. But before we do that, there's talk about cutting positions, reducing staff, and all that. I got one of those notifications. It didn't feel good, but I got it. So I'll deal with it. But what I'd like to talk about quickly is that in the last 2.5 years, that our reading scores in this district has increased. Our AP classes, dual enrollment, the industrial certificate-based programs have increased from 2,000 students to 6,000 students. So that's the input, throughput, and output. We're going to be putting people out of the school when they graduate to be viable members of the community. So that's happened in the last 2.5 years or so. Somebody mentioned too many chiefs. You got to be careful when you say things like that because I might be a Native American and I might take that be offended. Nevertheless, I don't have anything to win or lose here tonight. Got one of those little, I call it the blue letter, right? But I have experience. I worked in the New York City public school. I know it is a monster of a job to run a school district. It's not a mom and pop store. It requires a lot. We have the chiefs of accountability, the chiefs of different departments who are responsible for holding people accountable for what they're supposed to be doing. Prior to that, I think under the previous superintendent, we didn't have that. We didn't have accountability. We didn't have those increases in reading and in programs. We actually have children taking AP courses. That was mind-blowing to me because I thought all kids took AP courses. I'll be back. Tonight, I think, I spoke to a teacher today, and she said, you know what? If we don't get an 8% increase, so be it. But don't get rid of the people who are accountable. And I think that phone call was at about 4 o'clock this afternoon. She said, because that won't make sense. I'm going to pause now before I get escorted out, and I'll come back and finish. Whew.
Thank you, Dr. Leach. Next, we have David Ramsey. That's the millionaire? Yeah. I read all your books all the time. Thank you, Mr. Ramsey.
I wouldn't be here, I can tell you. But let me just say this, and I wasn't going to say anything until Mr. Gode said what he said about the other school districts. I was courted last year, and I'm an assistant principal at Park Forest, and I was courted last year to come to Livingston Parish. But I stayed right here because of the kids that I work with every day. So when I get a letter saying, hey, your job might be eliminated, I'm working at what you call a high-need school. So how are you getting rid of people, staff, support at high-need schools? So I don't feel appreciated in this parish because I stayed because I love what I do and I love the kids that I deal with. And yeah, they might be house-run, but they're my kids. So when you see the signs in Ascension and Livingston saying, come here, I have to wonder, why didn't I go to Livingston? Why didn't I go? And now I wouldn't have to worry about that because I know I'll still have a job. I wouldn't be worrying about how I'm going to pay my mortgage. wouldn't be wondering how I'm gonna send my kids to school. So those are the things you need to think about when you're looking at these eliminations, that people do matter. And I work every day. I'm at work at 6:15 to 6:30, and I don't leave the 5 to 5:30 because I have to get the job done. So that's all I need to say.
Thank you, Mr. Ramsey, because that's what we needed to hear. Next, we have Craig Bilbrew.
Good evening. Again, I am here and I spoke before, and I'd like to thank you all for listening to us. The board has not always gone in a direction that we want to, but at least now it's showing that you all are listening and you're trying. I'm here in support of option 2 because it shows our teachers and our support staffs that the community, the school board, and the superintendent is willing to do something to back up the words and the promises that have been made in the past. Although we don't understand why it's broken down, it is not exactly what we want, but it is something in the right direction of which that we're trying to go. And I appreciate it, and I would like you all to take into consideration and vote for option 2. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bilbrew. Next, we have Ms. Kadita Bologna Sims.
Hello, my name is Candida Bologna Sims, and I'm speaking on behalf of East Baton Rouge Parish Association of Educators. I'm the vice president. I'm speaking in favor, as far as for our members, for option 2, because, you know, it shows immediacy. It shows that we need the board and superintendent, okay, to make sure this happens. I'm telling you this now, okay, because many teachers, and we like option 2 because it favors teachers, educators, and all staff. It includes everybody, and that is what everybody is looking for. If a lot of this is going to depend on what you guys vote, you will lose teachers, educators, and other staff if you do nothing. Okay, so I just wanted to let you know, and just to give you a little background of some things, the teacher shortage is real. At my school, I was the ELA department head, and we had at the beginning of the school year, we had 3 openings in our English department. We had long-term subs. So I had my own classes, and I also had to assist in those classes. So in order to attract teachers, that's a start, is the pay raise, okay? Also, speaking in reference, we have a new teacher at our school, 2 years. They're looking elsewhere because of pay. So just to kind of, something needs to be done, or you're gonna lose teachers, educators, and staff. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Seeing no other cue cards at this time on this item, I would ask right now if there's any other public comments that need to be made on this item. Please submit your cue cards at this time. No, not on this item, I'm sorry. Okay, I'm sorry. Okay, because on some of them, they didn't have the item number, so that's the reason why I did not call them, but I'll go ahead and call now. Ms. Tunja McMillan. Okay.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Tanya McMillan. I am a parent of a child that attends a school here in East Baton Rouge Parish. And before I get started, if I could ask Council Gwen Scheinman a question. Is there any rules or mandates or protocol that would keep school board members or district members from returning emails or replying to emails that the constituents send?
Respectfully, we normally don't respond to requests from the audience, but I'll answer.
I'll ask the question on our behalf.
Okay.
Yes, sir. Okay, so, no, ma'am, I'm unaware of any policy.
Okay, so there's
or
no
procedure.
policy that would keep anyone from replying to an email?
I'm unaware of that.
Okay, thank you. Just wanted to make sure. Because I've sent several to several people about issues that I think are very serious, and one of them being a suggestion that we consider diverting some of our designated funds that we have set aside for school resource officers, for social workers, therapists, and counselors in our schools. Because at the end of the day, if we can't keep kids in schools, we have no schools. We have no funds to pay teachers, to give teachers this salary or any new salary. And kids are leaving this school district in droves, and a lot of it has nothing to do with academics, but everything to do with how they're being made feel. And everything to do with how they are feeling when they go to school and how they're feeling when they leave school. If we don't get to the emotional issues of these children, the teachers can't teach them. They're going to disrupt classes, and a frustrated teacher who feels overworked and underpaid is going to send them straight to that resource officer, and that's going to be that child's introduction to law enforcement. So what we're really going to do, instead of filling our schools, we're going to fill our prisons. So I'm begging you guys, for the children of Baton Rouge, that we do more to support their emotional health, that we invest more in social workers, because I saw that every school has budgets for timeout rooms, but not every school has a budget for a social worker or a therapist or a counselor. So again, we're being reactive, not proactive. Some of these kids have real issues. And if we don't start addressing that, there will be no kids to teach in the schools. There will be no teachers to pay. And if we don't get real about what's happening in this school district, let's just be honest. Everybody wants to play nice and smile and put on a good front, but nobody wants to get in any good trouble. What's happening to our schools if we don't consolidate them? We have a teacher shortage because they spread out amongst a bunch of empty schools. But if we don't do what we have to do to keep them in our schools, there will be no teachers, there will be no kids. And a lot of people think that certain parents don't want what's best for their kids, or certain parents don't care.
This time.
Clearly they do, because they're moving their kids to what they think are better options. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. McMillan. This time now, seeing no other cue cards for this particular item, we will now go back. I'm sorry. So some of these items say item 1, and some of them say item 2, and those are still, we haven't addressed those yet.
I think some of them don't realize that we took them out of order.
Oh, okay. Ms. Espinoza, did you want to speak on this item? No, I had to ask you now. Come on now.
Good evening. I'm Tamara Espinoza, and happy 4th to everybody. So I received one of those letters, and that's personnel, but that's my personnel business, so I'm sharing that with y'all. Y'all welcome. I have been in this situation 3 times with this district. I've only been here since 2016. I moved to East Baton Rouge Parish because I wanted to teach in Louisiana. I came from Arizona. I moved here to teach these children. I consider myself one of the valuable people you talk about, Mr. Goday. At one point, the district agreed that I was valuable because the district decided, we're not going to keep you in the classroom. You can reach more kids if we move you to an instructional specialist. You can reach more kids if we move you to a dean. You can reach more kids if we move you to an assistant principal. Superintendent and Nicola and the people in the staff said, you know what, Ms. Espinoza, we see what you're doing at Marydale. I'm assuming that's what you said. In my head, that's how that sounded. And you said, we're going to move you to Northeast as assistant principal because those kids need you, Ms. Espinoza. And I said, okay, 40-minute ride, but I'm rolling. And now again, little Miss Espinoza is on the chopping block again because this compensatory staffing model says they no longer need an assistant principal, which I have no issue going back to teach because that's my first love. I've been teaching all year. I've taught 4 classes. However, I will tell you, Mr. Goday, and I'm looking at you when I say this, I won't teach in East Baton Rouge Parish. I will be one of those talents that you lose because I'm not willing to take the pay cut. Don't give me money and then say, we're going to take it from you not because of something I did. Because I'm not going, Mr. Shamlin said several times, I'm not going to take the money that I'm getting for assistant principal, which means I'm going to go back to where I was, which means I'm going to take a pay cut of almost $20,000 that I've worked for to get out of the classroom. And no, baby, I like East Baton Rouge Parish, but I love my kids. So no, I would be the talent. That Ascension, if you looking, hey, Miss Espinosa's looking, Livingston, call me. Because I'll come. If I'm a teach, let me go somewhere where somebody's gonna value me, and I'm not gonna have to keep worrying about on the day before I leave, getting a call that you gotta go. And mind you, just for the record, yesterday was my last official day until y'all decide whatever. But guess where I was today? At Northeast Elementary, signing and putting in place for those ESS kids, working through those SBLCs. But I don't get paid for that. But again, I'm just one of the 160, so I'm good to go.
Thank you, Ms. Espinoza. Next, we have Ms. Robin Clark.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Robin Clark. I'm an educator here in East Baton Rouge Parish. I'm a National Board Certified teacher. And I'll just tell you a little bit about my journey. First of all, before I go that far, I'd like for you to vote on option 2 and select that as your choice tonight. That's my favorite one, and I would hope that you would support me in this cause. I'm going to tell you a little bit about my journey. I was in a place where my son was at Lehigh at the time. He was a sophomore in school. And I needed more money because we were planning for him to go to college. We didn't qualify for all the money he needed because he was going in engineering, so he needed a lot of money. We didn't qualify. I was going to have to come out of pocket for a certain percent. I didn't have it in my salary, just didn't. Wanted to, but didn't. Couldn't save along the way. Not for that, because we had to live life and eat along the way. So we were doing what we needed to do. We shifted what we ate. We did what we needed to do to travel, all those types of things. But I was a teacher, and I continued to teach. I enjoyed the schedule. I loved my kids, and I taught in just about every one of your districts. I live, and I'm a taxpayer in District 8. I've taught at Shenandoah, taught at Audubon, Westminster, Sharon Hills. And when I got my National Board certification, the payoff would be that over a period of 5 years, I'd get a bump in my salary of $5,000 each year. I chose that option. I could have worked on my PhD because I have a master's degree. And so I chose to go that route. It was shorter. Financially, it would make a difference enough. So it's over 5 years, I get $25,000. I could send my son to engineering school. He's going to graduate this fall. I'm a product of East Baton Rouge Parish. I graduated from Baton Rouge High. And my journey is that I've been a survivor. I got that board certification when I was working at a D school, thank you very much, teaching pre-K. Those $14,000 per student that we are seeing, I know of 10 children who left my school district area zone and have gone to a new charter school 1 block from my house. There's another public school, another private school about 2 blocks from that one. We're losing our best teachers. If I were to teach at that school, I could walk or bike. My salary would double. I still teach in my general vicinity, less than 3 miles from my house, and I choose to stay. But don't you know how tempting that is? Double your salary, just about double? There's a cost, and I paid that cost. And I stay because I love Baton Rouge. I love my school system. But at some point, the teachers who are leaving are taking it because it's just financial. It just has to make financial sense. Option 2, please. Checkmate.
Thank you, Ms. Clark. At this time now, I see no other cue cards on this particular item, so we will go back to the board. First inside of the queue is School Board Member Nathan Russ.
Almost forgot I was in the queue. Thank you. I just want to, provide a little comment on lots of the comments from tonight. I want to thank the public for their comment and weighing in on these decisions that we have to make as a board and showing us your priority. what I want to ask the public and what I want to ask our board and our central office to do is to help us move this work forward. I will tell you personally, I'm very frustrated with this process, but we have important work to do. I don't think it will be helpful to point fingers or lay blame on anyone's doorstep for why we don't have a budget that everybody's happy with and is ready to approve tonight. We've got to move the work forward. And so what I would encourage everyone is to have patience. Let's have cool and calm heads. Let's not get to a point where we have inflammatory speech and accusations and threats of not showing up to work or violence or anything else, because it doesn't move the work forward. The work we are tasked to do are educating our children. I don't think there's a board member up here that will disagree that our very, very valuable staff, the ones that do this work, or how that gets done. I don't think there's a board member that will disagree that that we need to do more for those people. The real question is just, what is the way to do that? What is the way to do that to ensure that we have a future for those people, those employees, that we have a future for our kids, that we can continue to educate them at the level that they deserve. Personally, we have spent, my opinion is we have spent a lot of time up here in the dais talking and hashing out permutations of how we're going to solve a problem that we know has to be solved. There's no disagreement over that. It's just, to what degree do we want to answer it? That isn't that complex of a problem to solve. It's going to take our leadership to continue to ask the questions that they need and lead us to a budget that we can have consensus on, and I look forward to that. It's going to take our board members working together, communicating, acknowledging that we can't dig in on our own opinions and being open to one another, and hearing different perspectives. I think once we can get past those big decisions, then really the work can begin, which is looking at how our dollars are going to impact the classroom, which is really where our board has the ability to set our priorities. And we haven't even gotten to that part of this process yet. That is what I'm looking forward to, is being able to ask, well, Superintendent, how are the decisions and staffing going to impact, the academic gains that we've made? And, what is our staffing model going to do to impact how many kids are in the classroom, and on, all these different things that are super, super important to the success of the next year, the success of our students moving forward. So I'm saying all this to hopefully offer, let's keep things in perspective. Obviously, it's not moving at the pace we would like. We've heard what consequences will be of not adopting a budget quickly enough, and I think it's important to keep that in perspective as well. But we also have to know that we didn't move this work forward in a way to achieve that, unfortunately. We got to swallow that pill. We've still got work to do. I will not be rushed on that work. I will not be pressured on that work. I'm going to do my job as a board member to ensure that our priorities are lined out in this budget. And we will make sure that we do that to the best of our ability. Thank you.
Thank you, School Board Member Russ. Next, we have School Board Member Cliff Lewis.
Thank you, President Lannis. Ms. Espinosa, Mr. Ramsey, Ms. Angela Reams, Ms. Clark, all other teachers sitting out there, thank you and Ms. Storm, thank you for everything you do. I was raised by a single parent who was a school teacher who got her first teaching job in 1960. I was an 18-year-old freshman in college before she had her summer vacation. I know what it's like growing up in a household run by a teacher. Mr. Russ just talked about, and Mr. Goldie, and everybody's talked about investing in our children, investing in our schools. One thing makes great schools, and that's great teachers. Let's invest in the teachers that we have. Let's find a way to take them from being good to great. Because I guarantee you, nobody who teaches at school gets into this business to get rich. If that was the case, everybody would be teaching. However, many of the people in this world who are very well off today can think a teacher, because they wouldn't be where they are without great teachers. Right now in East Baton Rouge Parish, there's an estimate. Everybody knows what third grade reading scores and math scores, what that leads to, the type of projections that those numbers lead to. Right now in East Baton Rouge Parish, we have estimated 1,000 plus third graders who are reading at least 2 years below grade level, on top of the learning loss they impacted during COVID. An estimated 1,000 plus. In math, it's an estimated 900. So let's pay our teachers. Let's find a way to invest in them. And we do that not by paying an enormous amount of money for, never mind, that's not germane to the topic. However, we've got to take money, our dollars, and we've got to invest in our teachers if we're going to continue to invest in our children. The two go hand in hand. Great teachers, great students, great outcomes. And, you know, there's no secret that the teacher profession has been watered down. I mean, it has been. But it does not mean that those people who are in this profession cannot be made great teachers. Let's invest in our teachers. My wife may disagree with this statement, but by nature, I tend to be conservative. She would argue with that. I guarantee you, she'd argue that point all day with you. But we've got to be conservative until we get our footing. There's nothing wrong with being a fiscal conservative. Mr. Godet he's a fiscal conservative. But if two people claim to be conservative, doesn't mean they're going to see it the same way. We've got to invest in our teachers. We've got to invest in our students. And we've got to make sure that this district is on solid footing to do both of them. Thank you for coming out. Thank you for everything you do, teachers. My hat's off to you every day. Every day. Thank you, and I appreciate everything you do. Thank you, Mr. Lannis.
Thank you, School Board Member Lewis. Next, we have School Board Member Vice President, Ms. Carla Powell.
Again, I want to reiterate the sentiments of our board, my colleagues, and then also to say to those of you who are in the audience, again, thank you for what you do, and thank you for continuing to be on the front lines, because that's the reality. Some of the things that I thought about as I thought about the 4 proposals that are here, as well as what we need to do moving forward. You know, I quickly think about the fact that when we consider ourselves as number one, fiscal stewards, and then also taxpayers, we have to make sure that we are making the decisions that reflect those roles. So when we think about which options we choose, we need to make sure that we're being mindful of something that is sustainable. And then at the same time, make sure that we're able to move quickly and expeditiously, but at the same time, making sure that we look at every aspect, just as Mr. Russ mentioned as well. And I say that because, right now, we know that there are, as we've mentioned before, staff and educators who are receiving certain letters right now. And I can tell you, just as Ms. Espinoza mentioned, if I was one, I would be looking for another job right now. That's the mindset that I would have. And then at the same time, teachers, educators in general, this is the time that we look for other jobs, that we look for the next highest paid situation if we're not comfortable where we are. And so we have to consider all of those different things and all of those different principles and ideals as we move forward. So I just want to encourage my colleagues to make sure that we are taking this time and that we're using it wisely, that we're crossing the T's more than once and dotting the I's more than once, and taking this whole process seriously, but moving as quickly as possible because we don't want to lose our good people. At the same time, I have heard you, Ms. Matthews, along with several others, in regards to whether or not, if we chose a stipend option, which I really, really hope that we do, that if we choose that stipend option, the possibility of changing the time frame of when that money would be or those funds would be released, that is something that we can definitely work towards, because our goal is to represent the people. And if the people are in need of those changes, we can consider that. So I just, I have a hard time separating the two of saying I might be in governance, but not be a parent and not be a teacher at the same time. And know that majority of this room, even if you no longer work in a school, you're still educators. Even when we talk about school staff like cafeteria workers and cooks and whomever else, everyone from those who take care of the grounds on up to those who guide the entire process, we are all educators because we come in contact with kids and we're those role models for kids. So my statements today just are simply that we have to put our minds together on this. And we have to get this right. This is a very sensitive time. I encourage our audience, our listening audience, speak out to your board members. Tell us what it is that you need. That way the budget will be reflective of what our community needs. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Vice President. Next, we have School Board Member Patrick Morton.
Thank you, President Linus. Thank you, Vice President Powell, for that moving summation. I agree with all of that sentiment. I think I want to join with everybody in thanking the teachers, the bus drivers, the custodians, everybody that we lump into the broad category of teachers and support staff for the tremendous work that you do. We know that you often feel unappreciated. When I was running for office, every time I got knocked on somebody who turned out to be a teacher, I got an earful from them, right? I talked to people who quit teaching 7 years ago because they didn't think anybody cared. And so one of my personal missions in being on the board is to convince you with what I do, not with what I say, that we do care, that we all care very much about the service that you provide. I think as we look at these budget issues, one of the points I've made several times over the past 6 months up here is that we can't truly, we don't have enough money to pay all of you teachers and support staff what you actually ought to earn based on the value you add to our society. Nobody's giving us the money to do that, right? So when we talk about a 4% or a 6% or 8% raise or a stipend, I understand that that's not what you deserve to be paid, even if we gave you all of that. We don't have control over that, right? The taxpayers decide and the legislature decides how much funding to provide that we are allowed to dole out in some level. What we do have more control over is your working conditions and whether you feel respected and appreciated. And so as we look at these budget issues, it's all about trade-offs. It's the trade-off between the kind of tactical risk versus the strategic risk as we had in the discussion that Mr. Godet and I had earlier. It is also about a trade-off between what we pay teachers and whether we're creating more burdens on them in the process of making the budget decisions that would allow us to pay more teachers. So let's, Mrs. Espinosa, I hope you don't mind me using you as an example. You know, as an assistant principal, you provide real value to the teachers in your school, right? That is your mission. That is your job, is to support them in doing that work. And if we eliminate your position, you're not there to provide that value, right? And so in some incremental amount, we have made the jobs of the teachers at your school more difficult because we have eliminated the support that you provide, the leadership and the guidance that you provide. So we've made their job more difficult. To the teacher in the classroom, what's more valuable? That, I mean, terrible choice, right? And we have to make terrible choices, right? But terrible choice. Would you as a teacher rather have, an extra $3,000 or $4,000 a year? Or would you rather have the support of the positions like Ms. Espinosa and the other support positions, the administrative positions that are proposed in some aspects, drafts of the budget for elimination? If the budget, if a cost impact of providing a pay increase is that we increase average class size from 28 to 33, that's making the teacher's job much more difficult, right? Because those 5 extra students are not all 5 perfect students that don't have any emotional trauma or IEPs or anything like that, right? That's 5 more students that have an awful lot of paperwork and an awful lot of attention and love, frankly, that the teachers got to provide when they're already stretched too thin teaching 28 kids. And so, one hopes that we could provide a budget that gave teachers pay raises and didn't cut anything that's essential or that's actually supporting the teachers and the students out there. And maybe it's possible to do that. And I certainly hope that as we continue to work through budget options that we focus very heavily on what the consequences are of any cuts that are proposed to personnel in particular, right? And sometimes it's appropriate, and sometimes it's a hard decision that has to be made, and it has a negative impact on people, and we're in charge, and the buck stops with us, and sometimes we have to make that judgment call. But it's incumbent on us to do everything we can to avoid that kind of cut if we possibly humanly can, and be responsible stewards. As we look at these budget options, I don't know where I'm going to land, and I think we've got a lot more discussion to have next week that I look forward to. I tend to focus more heavily on a stipend option, although I wouldn't necessarily be opposed to a stipend combined with a small permanent increase. So some flavor of option 2 I kind of like. I am concerned about option 4 because, and I've read all of your shirts tonight, and I think it's an appropriate and profound message. The prior versions of this board have made promises that we are now struggling to keep, right? And option 4 talks a big game about what we're going to do in future years when we don't know what the budget reality is going to be in those years. I think it is absolutely a goal that we should strive and do everything we possibly can to do to find a way to fund permanent pay increases, right? For all of the teachers and support staff that need and have earned one. But to say, well, we've got this 4-year plan, right? Knowing that next year we're going to have to deal with ESSER and the loss of the ESSER funding, and who knows what else the year brings, to say now, yeah, no, we're committed on this 4-year plan based on the relatively meager amount of budget planning that we've been able to do for this year as a board, I don't think is something that I can ultimately support. And the last comment I want to make is less weighty, but I think important. We've been talking and focusing a great deal about the pay raise or stipend or compensation increase, and the fiscal uncertainty associated with use of Prop 3 surplus and other things. And those are all very important issues, but they are not the only issues that we will ultimately be deciding when we adopt a budget. I have heard significant complaints from some of our schools that the staffing model, as it's been followed the last couple of years, kind of historically is undercounted and underprojected the actual staffing needs of individual schools at the beginning of the year, right? And I don't fully understand the systemic reasons for that, and I haven't been able to get all the numbers yet to document that. But I do know, and we all read the headlines last fall, that we started school with an awful lot of vacancies. And some of those vacancies we've heard have continued throughout the year at great negative impact to the other teachers in the school and to our students. And so I would encourage when we come back next week, Superintendent, that we have some more information about how we calculate and project the staffing needs of each school, and with perhaps a historical comparison of how those projections have worked out and proved out the initial expectation compared with the actual for that. So I think that's all I have. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Moving along, school board member Michael Gode, you're in the queue.
Thank you. I'll try to keep this short. One thing I sense around this board and around the public is a sense of pessimism. And I think that's a little bit misplaced, because you heard people coming up, and I think we're going to get reports coming up about the academic progress that we're making. We are making good academic progress, as far as I can tell, through all the schools. We'll have more evidence of that coming on. But I think also this board, really for the first time, we haven't had a pay raise in, 15 years? We're actually talking about the things that need to be talked about, and we're actually trying to address those things. And no one is talking about increasing class sizes. I think there were a minor class size increase in middle school for 1 or 2 students or something like that, but it's extremely minor. There's no change in the staffing model other than that, which will increase class sizes. So we're not trying to put that on the back of teachers. We're trying to continue the academic progress that we've gotten. The comprehensive staffing model has not changed over the years. We just finally enforced it for the first time in a long time. And I know there's been a lot of talk about the 160 letters that went out. I don't know about that. I don't know the details around that. The only thing I do know about that is it was intended to be done in person, so it would be a little bit more personal and show a little bit more respect. And maybe that didn't happen, and if it didn't, I'm sorry, but I know that was the intent behind that. And I know each individual is going to have their own view of how that worked and how that worked out. And I as a board member, I can't sit here and address individual positions and individual things that happen, but we as a city need to get behind what we're trying to do in the school district. We got 50 years of where everyone thinks the EBR public school system is not a good system. We do have 1,000 kids that aren't at 3rd grade level. We do have 900 kids that aren't at math, but we're improving. We're doing those kinds of things that need to be done. We're opening up new options for schools. We're putting in early childhood education to address many of those things. Our scores are coming up. We have a lot of work left to do, but it's not like we're coming in this doom and gloom. First time we've ever had $100 million in our general fund to help us get through these things. It's never been there before. And those are all the things that seem to be getting lost through all of this. That everybody is bickering and talking about what are the things they don't like. but not focusing on how many things are going in the right direction. We got a lot of things going well here. For the first time on the board, I can sit back and say, gee, I am proud of lots of things that are happening. I couldn't say that many times before. And so I just don't want us to lose sight of that. You know, as a city of Baton Rouge, getting a high-functioning school system is the most important thing I think we can do to make the city grow and be proud and solve a lot of the social issues and things like that that we have. And I'm proud to be a part of that. I think we're making progress. Are we perfect? No, nobody's perfect. There are going to be mistakes. Do we all agree on exactly what is the right way to do things? No, we're all different people. We're going to have different opinions. Are we going to ever get to a budget we all like? No, we're never going to get to a budget we all like because we all have different opinions. But I hope real soon we can get to a budget we can all live with, and we can get to a budget that focuses on the key things that we need to do. And again, I'll come back to those key things being academic progress, which focuses on paying our teachers and getting the teachers the respect and pay and love that they deserve. And thank you, all of you who are teachers who are out there coming and do that. But we need to be a little bit more optimistic about where we're going. Things are not going to hell in a handbasket, guys. We're making good progress. We really are. And we need to focus on how to keep the progress going. And that needs to be our main focus, and keep our eyes on the ball and keep our eyes on the aims of what are we trying to do. Improve academics. Make this a system everyone can be proud of. Thank you.
Thank you, School Board Member Gode. And seeing some of the names in the queue, I'm going to go last. And that will wrap up the public comments on this because we still have to make a motion on this particular item. The first place I'll start off at is piggybacking off of something that School Board Member Gode just brought up. If you're looking for a perfect district, don't look at EBR. Don't look at Ascension. Don't look at Livingston. Don't look at Orleans. Don't look at Jefferson. Don't look at Caddo. You will not find it. Don't look at Chicago public schools. Don't look at New York public schools. Don't look at Boston public schools. I can guarantee you, you will not find it. If you do the research, 6,000 districts around the nation right now are going through the same issue of strumming through budgets because that's what ESSER was intended to do. I just want everybody to just take a deep breath and imagine where we would be if we did not have federal assistance with ESSER when COVID hit. The situation we're talking about right now would have been exacerbated 10 times over, I can guarantee you. We are not the only district in the state of Louisiana that is the size that we currently are that are going through what we're going through. I just want to give assurance first before we go into the conversation. Jefferson Parish, the largest district in the state of Louisiana, has been cutting back $10 million a year since 2001. Just this year, they just voted on consolidating 8 elementary schools because they're trying to become more efficient in what they do. Caddo Parish, $15 million just this year alone. Chicago, so I want to bring up a large district that's urban also, $65 million in cuts that they have to administer this year. So I say like to say, this has not been an easy process, but I think School Board Member Nathan Russ brought up something very, very important. We have to be patient with what we're dealing with. And we have to be patient because we're doing it on behalf of our citizens. What we cannot allow ourselves to do is to create self-sabotage of our own district. Because of our idea of bringing families back, making teachers feel appreciated, I know we have to start with action, but we have to also profess that. We have to say that. We have to manifest that if we're ever going to get close to a perfect district. Because I know we won't get there. Every single item that you have seen proposed, guess what? Some of those items were proposed by board members. So I will applaud my board members for doing their work, doing their due diligence, working amongst each other, working with community stakeholders, working with business leaders to help us figure out the current situation that we're in right now. I want to thank School Board Member Nathan Russ and also School Board Member Patrick Martin, because something you didn't hear was they want to introduce an item next week that gives us guidelines around the priorities for our budgets. Because that's one thing we haven't talked about. While we talk about school safety all the time, what is the mechanism that we currently have right now to ensure that it goes inside of our budget? We don't have one. We're only working on word of mouth. So I want the general public to just understand that our board is at work. And this is not easy, but we're going to do everything physically possible to exhaust every single option. I think we have been very clear about that. If you haven't heard a consistent note since we've been on this board, we have said since the beginning, we're going to exhaust every option before we make a choice. This just puts us in a place to now we can start narrowing down what those choices look like, so you, the general public, understand that we're looking and paying attention to what those fiscal impacts are going to feel and look like. Now, something that you brought up, Coach, was Hess. I don't want anybody to walk out this room today feeling like Hess has gotten a slap on the arm and they're okay. I want to be the first person to say that, because if anybody in this room believes that, I got some oceanfront property in Idaho I want to sell you. Basically meaning it is not the case. The reason why they were named is because they're the current vendor. But the reality is this: any vendor that we go with, we're going to have to increase the budgetary threshold because nobody can do it for the amount that we're currently offering right now. We sat down with everybody, we had that understanding. So whether we want to go with them, whether we want to be direct service again, or whether we choose to go with another vendor, the understanding needs to be that we're going to have to increase our budgetary threshold in that area. And there's going to have to be some other areas, unfortunately, we're going to have to also do the same thing. School safety is one of the things that the superintendent said they're going to increase the threshold on. We heard a lot about central office. I would ask the question, can somebody please let the general public know how much money we're currently cutting from central office right now? How much? $13 million being cut from central office. Is it enough? It may not be, but guess what? We're not done with the budgetary process yet. So we're going to continue to have those conversations. We still have 2 town halls and a summer retreat by which everybody inside of this room and anybody inside of our community is free to attend and give their public input. Because we want to make sure that that is the top key priority, that we get input from our entire community as we continue to talk around these budgets. We hear you, teachers. We know you don't want to walk into the school building and we don't have a budget approved before you start back work. Trust me, we have heard that 10 times over, which is why we are trying our best to set a special meeting date in the month of July so that we can, as we narrow these budgets down, as we continue to have those conversations, we make the most concerted effort to come up with the best plan possible for which one we're going to choose. I also wanted to give just a little context on option 4. No matter what option we choose, I promise you, I'm standing behind the best one. So whether that's option 2, whether that's option 3, option 4, whichever our board decides, I'm going to stand behind that because that's what's best for our district. And I give you that comfort and understanding. But the one thing I wanted to also clarify was in option 4, while pay raises may be the only one limited to certain employees, the stipends are going to be open to everyone. So that $2,000 that you see, that's going to be open to everyone to receive in option 4. I just wanted to clarify that because I didn't want anybody to walk away thinking that the 4% salary increase and the 4% stipend will not be available to everyone. And the idea of doing it that way is because in 2015, teachers were placed on a salary freeze where you didn't receive any money. So the way I backpacked that was, okay, we're going to make this a step ladder to get you caught up to speed to where you need to be for 3 years. First year, 8%. Second year, 10%. Third year, 12%. On top of what the state is already doing, and then that'll make us one of the most efficient districts in the state. But also, we will not exhaust all of our accounts down. I don't want to grandstand. I just wanted to let our community know what this process is, let you know we appreciate you, and also let you know we own the situation, and we apologize to anyone who has felt slighted, who's felt like they have not been a part of this process, and have felt like their voices have not been collectively heard. We're going to do better. I commit that to you. We are going to do better for you, EBR. Thank you. I'll stop there. And given that there is no other comments, I'll ask, could we please get a motion on the item? I'm sorry, we couldn't hear you. Could you repeat again?
Sorry. I would like to move that we defer consideration of this item to the committee of the whole next week.
So for clarity, just remember, any item moved to the committee of the whole agenda cannot be finalized that night. It have to be considered at the regular meeting for final consideration. So that might, just keep that in mind in terms of approval of a budget or how you would like to proceed.
But President List, this is the third item on the original agenda. which was to narrow consideration of the options, correct? And so my proposal is that we defer till next week the vote to actually reduce the number of scenarios to be considered from 4 to 2.
Can I offer a friendly to that? Just to clarify on the recommended action, the recommendation was set a special meeting of the board to occur prior to the committee of the whole to select 2 options for further discussion. Council, would that allow us to participate in this process, but leave it open-ended so that we don't have to wait to hold a vote right until the official board meeting, correct?
Correct, yeah.
So-
And thank you for helping me to clarify that. Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that it was clear we should conduct that in a special meeting, which
Yes.
will allow you to finalize
Thank you.
it versus.
Yes.
Yeah, so my friendly would be to do it in that way,
Is it
right?
to actually call a special meeting for
Call a
before the
special
committee
meeting.
of whole?
Prior to, yeah.
And I believe that's actually the way the item is worded.
Yes, that's correct.
It's
Yeah.
actually worded to create a special meeting.
That's right.
and
Okay,
conduct
then
that vote. Yeah.
if that's the way the item's already worded, then I move the item.
Yeah, no, that's okay. So just for clarity, the vote that we're voting on is not going to create any selection tonight. It's going to move it to the committee of the whole next Thursday, and it's going to be a special meeting before that board meeting to have discussion. So I just wanted to be very clear about that.
Thank you. And I don't want to raise a parliamentary issue terribly much, but we've really been discussing that item all night. We didn't actually have a motion before we started engaging in the conversation. So are we on solid legal ground, or do we, having made this motion and we get a second, do we then have to go through the whole board and public comment again?
No, sir. So state law actually states that a period of public comment or comment must occur ahead of an agenda item. It does not say ahead of a motion. So it gives a board, it specifically gives a chairman the option to either have comment ahead of a motion or ahead of an agenda item. And the reason for that is a person might make a motion that might be significantly different from the considered agenda item. So
Okay.
to answer your question, Mr. Martin, the law allows that comment period ahead of the item itself.
Then I move the item.
Yes, sir. Can we get a motion on the original item? Oh, okay, I'm sorry. I thought you. Okay, I'm sorry. I apologize. I must have heard that wrong. All right, can we get a second? All right, so that's moved by School Board Member Patrick Martin and seconded by School Board Member Nathan Russ. Okay, Madam Secretary, please call for the vote. We will defer to General Counsel.
I'll see if I can find the actual law. I don't generally refer, as I said to Mr. Martin, state law requires a period of public comment ahead of an agenda item for public school boards, not ahead of a motion. And so it's at the leisure of the chair to decide, do we comment ahead of a motion or the agenda item? Tonight, the comment was ahead of the agenda item.
That's correct.
Okay? And that's clear in law. So it's at the leisure of you as the chair of this meeting to make that decision.
No, sir. So we actually talked about this beforehand, so we're good and clear. We can go ahead and go forward to vote.
Please vote.
Do we need to do a roll call? Do we need to do a roll call?
I would say for the sake of time.
District 1, Mr. Blue.
Yes.
District 2, Mr. Lannis.
Yay.
District 3, Ms. Powell.
Yes.
District 4, Ms. Stewart.
Yes.
District 5, Mr. Lewis.
Yay.
District 6, Mr. Russ.
Yay.
District 7, Mr. Gode.
Yay.
District 8, Ms. Kennison.
Yay.
District 9, Mr. Martin.
Yay.
Motion carries.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. Moving right along, we'll go into item B1. Consideration of a request for the approval of the proposed 2023-2024 general fund budget, the budget resolution, and the 2023-2024 salary schedule. Can I get a motion? Moved by School Board Member Shoshone Stewart.
I was going to move, since the action we just took, I was going to move to delete the item from the agenda.
Okay, would you like to remove your motion? Okay, she removes her motion. It's open. Okay, so we have a motion to remove the item from the agenda.
To defer it indefinitely.
Okay.
I'll second.
Okay, so we have a motion on the floor for clarity to remove item B1 indefinitely from the agenda, seconded by School Board Member Mark Ballou. Okay, this time now we're going to go to our board for public comment. Seeing none at this time, I'll wait.
Motion to defer.
Okay, seeing none at this time, we will go to the general public. Item B1. First up, we have Dr. James Finney. Before anyone comes to the mic, I would just like to remind the general public that we are speaking on item B1. This is consideration for the general fund budget for year 2023-2024. To delete this item from the budget. To delay indefinitely. So just want to remind the general public, this is what we're speaking on this item. Go ahead, Dr. James Finney.
Thank you. I believe it is wise to defer this indefinitely in hopes that the administration presents a complete and thorough budget that considers whatever you decide with salary schedules first. I think you must absolutely settle the question of salary schedules and stipends before you even think about considering HES and charter school reductions and all those other things that are very important questions to consider with the budget and have gotten lost in all the discussion about stipends and raises and I think you have to demand more clarity from the administration. For example, we just heard there are 13 million in central office reductions. Earlier we heard a cut from 11 chiefs to 8. Well, I would love to know, we already know that Mr. Nikes has moved on to a neighboring school district and a higher ranking position. But I would love to know which two of the cabinet level positions are being eliminated and how that's going to reflect the organizational chart, because the organizational chart that is in those budget books shows 10 chiefs. And until any budget that's presented is internally consistent, you're wasting your time in considering it, you're wasting the public's time in reacting to it. Demand better from the administration. You still have 10 chiefs getting paid really well, many other people at the director level and above. Demand that the administration put together a serious proposal as though they are in charge of an important public institution that goes through roughly $800 million every fiscal year. Now, I may sound pessimistic, but it's because I have kids that went through the public school system. I am a proud father of 3 McKinley High School graduates. I tried private schools. They didn't cut it. We went back to the public schools that were better. And one thing that's important when you believe in public goods and the common good is that public money must be very, very well spent. Private businesses have the right to waste money. Public institutions should work as effectively as they possibly can, and you have a responsibility to make sure that happens. You have one employee, demand excellence from him, or find a different superintendent. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Finney. Next, we have Ms. Storm Matthews.
I would like nothing better than to see that budget go completely bye-bye, considering it still has schools that have zero budget whatsoever, most of them being our alternative schools that need the most support. Yes, EBR Readiness Middle still has absolutely no budget. There's also no budget for Rosenwald. Also, I would like to, he stole my comment about the org chart. The org chart does have to be voted on by the board, and I would like an updated version in the draft. That would be awesome to know who my organizational leadership is. So I think that a new one coming back from you all would be awesome as we move forward, to be able to better see what we're doing going forward. And also for the schools, the staffing, that being our biggest thing moving forward. The budget is so much more than just the stipend and the raise. That is very important, but our staffing allotments at the individual schools, because there is a very, very, very big difference than 22, 23 kids in a school and 28 or 33. And for anybody saying we're not having that big of a change last year was insane. So if you think it's not that big of a change, please come step into our classrooms, spend a day there, come take over for us, because we would love to have somebody else do it in our shoes. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Matthews. Next, we have Ms. Destiny Bland.
Good evening, great people. I stood before you guys 2 weeks ago, and I was told by one of your board members that they apologized to me, stating that the budget was given to them May 15th. I heard the young man, I actually got in my car and started driving really fast from Zachary as I watched the board meeting. And I heard you compare all the big school districts and all the districts around here. And the one thing that dawned on me is when I was moving here from out of state, I remember how slow the process was for them to just transfer over my credentials, and that affected me. Then when I got in the schools, my very first school was Marydale Elementary, and I seen that they were still doing LEAP testing on paper, and they were just introducing things to the district like AVID, but it wasn't an AVID district yet. And I thought they're 10 years behind. And then they introduced Pathways, and I'm like, that's a 10-year-old program. And that affected me because I'm like, it's affecting the students. They're moving real slow. And then we get here, and it's the day before the fiscal year ends, and you guys have no budget. That's moving real slow. Now, it's my understanding that the superintendent works for you all and we work for the superintendent. At least that is the way that it was broken down to me. If it's not that way, I do apologize. But you all started in January, and you all allowed your employee to give you a budget that stabilizes people's livelihoods. You allowed him to give you that in May. And here we are a day before, one day, and you have 100 and some odd people receiving letters the day before that they might not have gas and food money and mortgage money. And you all sit here and tell us, let's think about the good that we're doing. Let's think about the increase we made over the last 50 years. But what we're talking about is today. And people's livelihoods, they're going away today. So I need you all to figure it out. And next year, I need you all to have your employee bring that budget before May, because this never needs to happen again. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Bland. Next, we have Dr. Leach.
Let me know if I'm off topic, but I would be remiss if I did not say tonight that I ask each board member to seriously, honestly think about supporting option 4.
I'm sorry, Ms. Leach. Yes, that would be off topic because we just talked about all the
I
proposals.
know, but I was confused.
Oh, yes, ma'am. That's okay.
Okay.
You're going to get your time back, too. Go ahead.
Okay, all right. So I said it anyway. Just keep that in mind. I really wanted to ask that a decision be made tonight. We don't have time to play with this, to look at it again, to reduce it to 2. I think we all know that, I think you all should know which 2 are the most viable budgets. And we should make a decision, since we've already voted, you've already voted on it for next week, make a decision next week. And let's move forward. There's another thing that I wanted to plant a seed, is that we have a lot of teachers, and I'm working on getting the numbers, who don't necessarily live in East Baton Rouge Parish. They live in surrounding parishes. So they're not generating revenue for us through our tax bases. So that's just something to think about. Why? You can ask me individually after. I am asking all of you to not look at this one-time stipend, at this little $38 a week increase on a paycheck for $2,000, or $58 a week on a paycheck, that's before taxes. I'll look at something, and everything is sustainable if you listen intently to what your superintendent, our superintendent, has to say and what his vision is. Because there is a vision. I don't know how many of you actually sit and talk and inquire and find out what and how these proposals for the option I'm not supposed to talk about can work for the district. And last but not least, whatever you do, however you do it, do not get rid of that 0 to birth to 3, those micro sessions, those micro schools. All right?
Thank you, Dr. Leach. Next, we have Ms.
Option
Karonda
4.
Corley. Ms. Corley? You have 2 minutes remaining. I'm kidding.
I was about to say my clock ain't even started. My name is Karonda Corley, proud parent, disabilities advocate. I just had to leave my child out there. We heard a little noise, kind of routed him. Just didn't know if everybody know that everybody is pretty antsy tonight. As a parent of a child with a disability, I'm beyond antsy. My anxiety level is beyond high, because this general budget is going to impact and affect my child. As you know, his teacher actually has called her. She actually accepted another job somewhere else, so she will not be here for this upcoming school year, which means we're back to where my child was last year without having a teacher. And just like one of the speakers before said, the general budget, the fiscal year is about to end. So where do you leave us? Because I know that our children with disabilities, that's how you generate your money. You generate the money off the backs of our children with disabilities. I know that somebody once stated that the MFP funding for those regular ed kids is about $14,000, but God, how much is it on them children with disabilities? My child received 3 therapists, speech occupational therapy and APE, adaptive physical education. All those therapists bring in a lot of money because they bill our insurances, whether we have private or we have Medicaid. So when we talk about the problems and issues, and as somebody stated, what the board's responsibility is, you have 2 employees. So I'm gonna correct that person. You have 2 employees, Mr. Shamlin and Mr. Narcisse. Those your employees. And when this Mr. Narcisse don't do what he's supposed to do, you're supposed to fire him. Because that's part of what some of y'all ran on, that your job is to hire and fire the superintendent. And when your superintendent, I'm being germane. I'm sorry.
No,
April,
ma'am.
stop my time.
Please stop the time, April.
Stop my time.
Ms. Corley, I need you to listen to me, please.
That's 10 seconds that go back.
Ms. Corley.
Go ahead.
We're not discussing the superintendent hiring or firing. We're talking about the budget.
Yes.
General fund budget 2023-2024.
Correct.
Please keep it
It's
Please keep it
germane to
germane.
that topic.
Okay.
It's very much germane. All right. Now, thank you, Ms. April. Back to what I was saying before I was interrupted. Part of the job responsibilities and duties of a superintendent is to give you a balanced budget. Balanced budget. So that you can make sure that every single child in this school system have the proper staff and supports. And when I say proper staff and supports, I'm talking about those American Disabilities Act accommodations, like my child being in this board meeting that he don't have, that I've been consistently asking for. Or let's talk about my child being at extended school year and don't have those accommodations. Let's talk about what it's gonna look like for this upcoming school year, because the budget don't exist. So when we talk about what we're supposed to have, I think you're supposed to answer to the U.S. Department of Ed. And I think everybody needs to start contacting the Legislative Auditor's Office and tell them that we want this school system audited. Why? Because they don't know how to do a budget that's going to make sure that every single child in this school system receive the proper, appropriate public education that is free to their parent every single day. It's 180 days in a calendar school year, and my child don't miss. Even when he had emergency surgery from breaking his arm on the school system's playground that's not in ADA accommodations. It's not in compliance. But again, you talk about a budget, what that budget gonna look like if all these parents of children with disabilities start suing, and what your pocketbook gonna look like. When people backs are pushed against the wall, how do they act? Because the last time I remember, pipes get to bursting. And I'm telling you, that's where we at today. District 2, we want our board president, make sure we have a balanced budget that is reflective of making sure every child get what they supposed to get. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Corley. Seeing no other cue cards on this item, we'll go back to the board. I'm just gonna put myself in really quick. I just want to remind the general public that every year that we pass a budget, we submit it to the legislative auditor, and not one budget has come back with any compliance-based issues. I just want to say that in terms of the general budget. In terms of communicating to the public, because we have a fiduciary right to make sure we represent you correctly. So I just want to be clear about that. Seeing no other names inside of the queue at this time right now, I'll go to Madam Secretary and ask her for a vote.
Please vote.
This is item B1. I'm sorry. And just for clarity, we're voting on item B1, and this is to a consideration to defer
Indefinitely.
indefinitely. There we go. Okay. So that's what we're voting on right now.
The motion carries.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. Next, we'll move on to item B2. Ooh, this is going to be a long one. Consideration of a request for the approval of the 2022-2023 special revenue budget. A, proposed 2023-2024 adult and continuing education. B, revised 2022-2023 and proposed 2023-2024 radio training program. C, proposed 2023-2024 Believe and Prepare formula transition. D, proposed 2023-2024 career and technical education program number 998 vocation basic grant for states. E, revised 2022-2023 and proposed 2023-2024 child nutrition program. F, revised 2022-2023 and proposed 2023-2024 decathlon and fitness meet. G, revised 2022-2023 and proposed 2023-2024 EBR Kickoff Classic. H, revised 2022 and 2023 and proposed 2023-2024 Red Stick Tourney. I, Proposed 2023-2024 Educational Excellence Fund. J, proposed 2023-2024 ESSER. 1, achieve ESSER 2. 2, achieve ESSER 3. K, proposed 2023-2024 Every Student Succeeds Act ESSER consolidated. 1, approve letter for all ESSER consolidated budgets. 2, redesign 1003A. 3, Federal Program 916. 4, Federal Program 911. 5, Federal Program 978. 6, Federal Program 923. 7, Federal Program 935. 8, Federal Program 986. 9, Federal Program Comprehensive Literacy State Development, UIN 6 through 8. 10, Federal Program Comprehensive Literacy State Development, UIN 9 through 12. 11, Title I. 12, Title II. 13, Title III. 14, Title IX. Title IV. 14, Title IV. 15, Title IX. I, proposed 2023-2024 Gates Foundation. M, revised 2022-2023 and proposed 2023-2024 high school summer school. N, revised 2022-2023 and proposed 2023-2024 eye care program. O, proposed 2023 IDEA 611. P, proposed 2023-2024 IDEA preschool 619. Q, revised 2022-2023 and proposed 2023-2024 ERAA athletics. R, revised 2022-2023 and proposed 2023-2024 JRAA athletics. S, proposed 2023-2024 magnet school assistance program. S, proposed 2023-2024 said that already. T, revised 2022-2023 and proposed 2023-2024 middle school summer school. U, revised 2022-2023 and proposed 2023-2024 music instrument user fees. V, revised 2022-2023 and proposed 2023-2024 all parish music concerts. W, revised 2022-2023 and proposed 2023-2024 Proposition 2 tax plan. X, revised 2022-2023 and proposed 2023-2024 Proposition 3 tax plan. Y, proposed 2023-2024 pre-K early childhood. 1, approval letter for all pre-K budgets. 2, Cecil J. Precard, LA4 State 625. 3, Early Childhood Ready Start Network, CCDF 929. 4, Early Childhood Ready Start Network, PDG 942. 5, Early Childhood Lead Agency, CCDF 996. 6, Early Childhood Lead Agency State 619. 7, Early Childhood Guidance, PDG 872. 8, Early Childhood PDG 888. 9, Early Childhood Guides, CCDF 877. 10, Early Childhood 8G 671. And Z, revised 2022-2023 and proposed 2023-2024 school athletic accounts. AA, proposed 2023-2024 summer arts enrichment program. I am so happy you have to read this next week. Okay, can I get a motion?
I move we defer to a date uncertain.
Thank you. We have a motion to move to defer to a date uncertain. Can I get a second? Seconded by School Board Member Shoshone Stewart. Okay, at this time, we will go to our board for.
But I would like you to reread that.
I'm going to read it backwards this time. Okay, at this time now we're going to go to our board. First up, we have School Board Member Mark Ballou.
Just real quick, I know a lot of these special fund budgets are impacted by the general fund proposed spending. I just want to make sure there's none on this list that are time sensitive or that we should consider tonight.
No, sir, not that I'm aware of.
Okay. Thank you, School Board Member Baloo. Next, we have School Member Michael Goday.
Yes, I just wanted to make a brief comment because a lot of stuff has been said about the budget and the budget process. Two comments. One is the budget process and dates that were followed this year are exactly the ones that have been followed ever since I've been on the board and even the year before. Now, I agree with everyone. I think they're inadequate, and I think we need to change them, and we do need to change them to have this all brought sooner, but it is the practice that has been here every year since then. And in 2019, I believe, we actually passed a budget in August. So this is not the first time this has ever happened, and we need to do better. I fully agree. And on that vein about doing better, I know we're going to have a presentation either next month or the month after, but the prior board did pass funding to totally replace our financials and HR systems, and that process is underway as we speak right now. Hopefully some of those will be up and running in the next 6 months or so. I want to commend the staff who have done a tremendous amount of double duty, not only doing their current jobs, but also doing the job of trying to clean up 30 years of mess that have been in there. But that new system is going to be critical in us being able to provide reports, to do what-if analysis, and do all the kinds of things that we're able to do. So I didn't want it to come out as a reflection on staff, the fact that we don't have some of the things that we would like to have. We as a board, and prior boards really, did not provide them the tools. The finance system we have was installed in 1995. And so it is running with I think there's a little gerbil in there on a wheel spinning the thing to make it work. So our staff has worked very hard, but we haven't given them tools to do it. But we have given them tools. Those things are being updated as we speak, and I look forward to a much different budget discussion in the upcoming years when we have the ability to really do it. Because I have to give Ms. Lopez and others, although we have disagreed on some of the things about the budget, she and her staff has worked tirelessly to pull this together. They just haven't had the tools to do it effectively. So I didn't want anyone in the public going back and thinking that people aren't working hard and doing their jobs, and that's where we are. We are where we are. It's unfortunate. We're going to do better, but we're also providing ourselves the tools to do it better. And not only that, some of the sustainability issues we've been talking about, those same tools will allow us to streamline a lot of our processes and be able to do that much more cost effectively. So I look forward to all that being in place. But I didn't want anyone in the staff walking away feeling that they had been disrespected or anything like that, because I know the hard work that they've been going through trying to do double duty of all these budgets and implement the new system. So thank you.
Thank you, School Board Member Goday. This time now, seeing other names out of the queue, we will go to public comment. First up, we have Ms. Storm Matthews.
Real quick, the English teacher in me, the last one was, to put it off indefinitely. This one is to a date uncertain, just consistency. That's it. That's all I got. Thanks.
Thank you. I like your shirt, by the way. Next up, we have Dr. James Finney.
Thank you. I appreciate knowing what motion is being considered before I have the opportunity to speak. Thank you for returning to your normal meeting procedure for these last two items. With respect to the special revenue budgets, there are approximately 50 special revenue budgets, 200 and some million dollars, let's see, $230 million in projected expenditures. And you have barely touched on one or two of those special funds, if at all, in the budget hearings you've had to date. Anything that has more than $500,000 in expenditures, you are legally required to have a public hearing. So when you do get around to considering these special fund expenditures. A couple things. Make sure you give the public plenty of opportunity to comment on each of the major funds. And that might mean you have to be here more than 4 hours someday. But $230 million is a lot of money. Furthermore, the special fund book contains approximately 3 pages of numbers on each of those funds. That is insufficient detail. I've sent a few of you some suggestions on things you must demand from the administration before you even consider these special fund budgets. And I'm glad that you are deferring this until special fund budgets are actually ready for you to consider. I would hope you don't make the mistake of putting it back on the agenda in a week when it still won't be ready and there still won't be sufficient information. And I look forward to a thoughtful budget procedure a month or 2 away from now. So thank you for your positive votes on this motion.
Thank you, Dr. Finney. That was very well said. Okay, seeing no other public comment cards on this item, we will. I'm sorry, Ms. Corley, I did see yours. I apologize. It was under Dr. Finney's. You have the mic.
You can't forget about me. I thought I was your favorite constituent.
You absolutely are.
That's right. My name is Karonda Corley, parent and disabilities advocate, and I'm going to stay true to me and true to EBR students with disabilities. You did not mention that IDEA funding that goes up under the special budget, special revenue funds budget. But that IDEA funding and that ADA Title II, come on, son, that's a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful, beautiful thing, and that's one thing that we definitely shouldn't forget. I know we had some judges up in here. Thank you to our judges that are present. I really appreciate them being here because they know that I like to go in front of them, especially when it comes to these kids with disabilities. I do believe that since we passed the motion for that general budget to be indefinite, deferred indefinite, then I guess you're gonna have to defer that too. So when you make sure that you bring it back, make sure you bring all those people and pupil appraisal, those 10, 11-month, 12-month employees, those therapists, but make sure you bring all the support staff that's in there that's underpaid, that definitely need a pay raise. Because again, you paying a lot of these people that are top heavy, our chiefs, they getting paid courtesy of ESSER money, ESSER, and they were never included in our budget originally. And so now you're trying to you're messing with the budget and it's not balanced because you're trying to cover their salaries. So why don't you just start cutting them? I'm just gonna tell you the truth. If you don't have those gifted and talented, those twice exceptional, and them children with disabilities, you have no money. Because that $14,000 you get on them regular ed kids are not gonna be enough to be suffice. Or for the little money that they pay y'all too. I'm just telling you, real gonna be real. So, you talked about that food. Yeah, that food is a problem. You might want to look at some of those bills that's coming through too. Because y'all food department, Miss Dr. Nadine Mann, y'all not providing our children with disabilities that food. That transportation, come on, I could hit all of them. Every single one that you had on that special budget is hitting all our children with disabilities. And you forgot to mention those special populations like children in foster care. You ain't talk about them and those children that are incarcerated or those that are in alternative schools, because a lot of them are children with disabilities too, and all that fall up under that special revenue fund budget. So I do think that you need to make sure that you have all those people there. Oh, I'm sorry, half of them got letters to be cut. But make sure that you get them in here before you try to cut them and tell them that they don't have no job so that they can talk about that budget, because it's impacting all our kids, and it's going to impact you too. Pipes are bursting, and I think they bust. See you in court.
Thank you, Ms. Corley. Coming back to our board, seeing no another public comment cards. School board member Mike Goday, you're up.
Yes, this is, I just wanted to read this quote from Miss Matthews, and this is totally tongue-in-cheek, please. But Ralph Waldo Emerson once said, "A foolish consistency is the hobgoblin of little minds, adored by little statesmen, philosophers, and divines." So we try to be consistent, but not always. Thank you.
Thank you, School Board Member Gode. I'll just be really quick inside of the queue. I wanted to clarify. The homeless population that was spoken of was under number 15, Title 9, McKinney Vito homeless. Also, O and P are for IDEA 611, and the other one is for IDEA preschool 619. So I just wanted to clarify for the public that they were in fact covered. Thank you. Next in the queue, School Board Member Patrick Martin.
Thank you, President Williams. I was actually going to correct the record on your behalf for those same things. But
I appreciate
also
you.
wanna say, you know, it's unfortunate that in a lot of these discussions, we're talking about. Thank you. It's unfortunate that in a lot of these discussions, we wind up talking about and separating out different groups of employees, right? And you know, particularly those of you super highly paid chiefs out there, we care about the work that you do too, and we recognize that it's very valuable, right? And so as pay raises go, we've got to make hard decisions and stuff like that. But the reality is that this is a very large institution. You can't run it without, and the superintendent can't do his job without having adequate support at a very high level, right? And so there are going to be chiefs. How many and exactly how much they should be paid, that's up for discussion. But the work that you do, the work that the principals, the work that the administrative staff who may be left out of this proposal or that proposal, all of it's very, very important. And that's the reason that we pay people to do these things. And so I just didn't want to leave that atmosphere that some employees may be worth more than others. All of our employees are very valuable in doing valuable work. Not to say we can't make some improvements in some individual areas, but that's what we pay the superintendent to do. So I just want to express appreciation to all of our employees for what they do. Thank you.
Thank you, School Board Member Martin. Seeing other names inside the queue at this time, we're going to go back to Madam Secretary. Please call for the vote.
Please vote. Motion carries.
Thank you. Before I give the last announcement or item C of the night, I want to give a very special thank you to our Vice President, Ms. Carla Powell. And I'm doing this for a reason. Throughout everything that we've been going through this budget over the course of this month and last month, she has been actively preparing her wedding. She gets married this weekend, so please, thank you so much for your level of diligence, hard work, and determination to stand up for your constituents, stand up for teachers across our district, and just being a part of this board and making sure that voices are being heard, your voice is being heard. I just want you to know you're greatly appreciated, and I want to make sure I cover that. Coach wanted me to let the public know that that's his distant cousin, and he loves her very much. Thank you, Coach.
Yes,
Oh,
you
married
are.
his distant cousin. I'm
We
sorry.
will have the same initials as of next week.
That's a scary thought. But getting back to our last agenda item so I can get you all out of here, to get y'all just, hold up now, y'all wait, because now she's talking. I know, I'm just kidding. But getting to the last agenda item, C1, announcement of meetings. June 29, 2023 special meeting will be held during the Committee of the Whole on July 6th at 5 p.m. back inside of this central office boardroom. All right, without further ado, School Board Member Gode. Thank you. Meeting adjourned.
That was very sweet.